didn't know how. Yeah, they like to say that Virginia paid them any. Well, she owned that building. She owned that building. She was still living there. Yeah. Well, she had rental apartments, and then you had quarter tomorrow. Black house, one day. Then you had those two apartment buildings. That's the mom and dad lived up on.
They bought the street barber shop shoulder in Fort Street. I think that is the hotel with the same color.
Looks like a bunch of kids.
Oh, it's white.
Is it Friday? At the corner, you go on the front
We'll
door.
probably get a question on Kimberly people.
This is a local.
Okay, so let's just get started and see what happens. Stand, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate your interest in the city and participation in city government. We're going to change the order a bit tonight. The first item of business will be bill number 2019-56.
All right, bill number 2019-56 would be an ordinance to approve and to authorize the execution of a voluntary acquisition program for flood-damaged residences offered to buy real estate and acceptance for 134 West 6th Street, Herman, Missouri. And this is an ordinance to approve a contract to purchase 134 West 6th from the hospital. And we're getting the funds to do that from FEMA.
Do you have any other?
Nope, that's correct.
When will we close?
It's a good question. I sent them a estimated settlement document yesterday, so after that they should have some timeline, but right now we don't know.
Okay, so when this, when we close, then the property becomes ours and the building can be knocked out.
Correct.
Okay. All right, well, is there any further discussion any of the aldermen have on this? Joe, Clint, okay.
What is that building called? Is that the medical arts?
Yeah, I believe it was, yes.
Okay,
Move to approve.
we have a motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion's carried. The next item of business,
Mark, I'm sorry, you told me you thought you needed to read that twice.
Just if we can.
yeah, please do.
Bill number 2019-56, an ordinance to approve and to authorize the execution of a voluntary acquisition program for flood-damaged residences offered to buy real estate and acceptance for 134 West 6th Street, Herman, Missouri.
I move to approve the bill second read 2019-56.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried twice. The next item is Bill 55.
All right, bill number 2010-55 would be an ordinance authorizing a 2% increase to the city's tourism tax pursuant to Resolution 67.1360, and for submission of the issue as to whether said increase shall become effective to the voters of the city of Herman, Missouri at the general election scheduled to be held in the city on Tuesday, April 7th, 2020.
Okay, is there any discussion up here on that? Dave, Jim, anybody?
Well, I'm liaison to the tourism board. We discussed it in length. They discussed it in length. Their position was to educate, not advocate. They said they would continue to do the good work they have with the money that is allotted to them. They decided they did not want to get into the actual acquisition of the funds. They wanted to remain neutral in it. I respect that decision, so.
Anyone else? Jim, Bruce, Susan? We have some people in the audience that want to speak on that, I believe. I'm trying to get them in order, so bear with me. If you put- It turns out that one of them is Mr. Durham. Do you want to come forward and talk about this?
Sure.
Tom?
I know, getting all
How many
excited.
minutes are you giving them?
Well, since this is an ordinance, they can take 5 minutes or a little more.
Hopefully I won't take
If you
that.
start getting onto the same thing over again, we're gonna have to rein in a little bit.
Okay, I only had a couple different things, but, one was we tried this increase before and it failed, and I'm not sure exactly why. But that said, it could happen again. I mean, I guess you can always throw it out. The other thing is, it says that on the on the ballot, that the proceeds from the additional money will be for the sole purpose of promotion of tourism. And I know we've had this discussion many times on what that definition entails, but all the way back in the era of Jim Grieving, that first started off with that promotional money, or that money collected, was for marketing only. No other things can that be spent for, and I'm not sure if indeed your intent is to have it spent for other than marketing, that it should be spelled out under the sole promotion, or the sole purpose of promotion. So, I don't know if that means anything to you or not. And the last thing I have is, granted this would bring in considerable amount of income to the city for whatever purpose, but I'd like to know if anyone has considered the economic impact that it has on the city, pro or con. And I know with any time there's an economic impact, there should be a study performed and found out, is this going to be a good thing, a bad thing, whatever. And as an example of economic impact, I always use the example of everyone in the city, all the businesses working together need to promote each other so that we can all benefit. And as an example of that is that if people come into our business and say, where do I want to eat today? Where's a good place? And I mention every place except for one, for whatever reason, those people will not go to that restaurant to eat. The economic impact is they possibly lost income because I didn't suggest that. So that's an economic impact. And so same way with this tax, if someone decides not to stay at my place because the guy next door is a little bit less expensive, the economic impact is I've lost that income. People don't see that because it's very difficult to imagine, did you lose money, did you make money? And so economic impact studies, I think, are real important to see if indeed the increase will be a positive effect. That's all I got.
Tom,
Yes.
do you think that $2 on $100 will make somebody not come or go,
People
if
say
you're-
that all the time,
I
that,
just
we
asked.
don't look at it, but, and I wrote all you all an email that when we lived in Fenton area, Gravois Bluff, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, group there
of several department stores, lumber yards, grocery stores, all had an additional tax just for that shopping area. If I were gonna buy a high dollar item, I'd drive another 5 miles to go to Home Depot instead of Lowe's to save that additional tax. It made me mad. Now, granted, I'm just one person. I bought other things at Gravois Bluffs, but small ticket items. When you get into big ticket items like guest houses, then that could be an impact. Again, we don't know if it is or isn't, but I think it needs to be considered that are you making more for the city just because it's easy, or are you deterring tourists from spending their money? I don't know. I just think that you need to investigate further before you put it out to the public. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Only thing I would like to add there, Tom, is, I know you said that your neighbor may be a little cheaper.
Right.
Well, if we increase that, anyone that operates a transit location will be paying that tax also.
Well, they will.
Now, I went through and looked at a lot of them, yeah, the pricing is across the board. I've seen some for $70 a night, I've seen some for $125 a night. So that price variance, we don't control.
Exactly.
And this tax is not making money for the city. This suggested increase is an increase of monies for tourism.
Right.
That's gonna help Tammy with her budget, because when, my understanding back in 2004, 2005, when the tourism director was started, at that time, it was split up, being paid by some by the chamber, some I think by Mr.
Correct.
Deerberg, and maybe another bank. There's like 5 people that paid that salary. Over the 15 years, they have all gone.
Right.
Now the city is carrying that salary completely, which is taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
We, with this increase, and chamber is having financial difficulties with keeping the Welcome Center open. They're asking the city to look into whether or not the city could take the Welcome Center over. That's another story.
And back to promotions and salaries, okay? And I've also stated that you collect street tax, you collect park tax, and you don't take wages out of those tax money. It comes out of the general fund. There's no good reason to,
I think that's incorrect.
I don't think that's right.
All the park employees are paid directly out of the park tax, and half-cent sales tax for the street pays half of the street department salary.
okay, well, I stand corrected then, okay. But,
That's the idea I've come up with, is with this increase, it doesn't raise money for the city, it does go to the tourism, and what we take on maybe some more responsibilities. That's what we're seeking for, to get out of the general fund, which is the tourism director now, her compensation along with helping with the Welcome Center.
well, then back to the economic impact. If you take more money out of tourism, granted, theoretically, it should get more money. But if the economy turns and we lose money, her salary would still be fixed. So the promotion, marketing money would then go down, which then would snowball. So, I mean, it's a consideration, and I think that needs to be addressed.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Anybody?
No. Anybody over here? Thank you. Appreciate it. Melissa, you want to come forward? I know you have a statement on the, do you have 2 statements?
Well, would I be permitted to talk about both issues in one
Well,
statement?
we're talking about the tax now. It's a separate
Right.
issue. Is there any way you can break your statement out?
I would do,
or not?
I can do that, yes sir.
Okay, please do that. We'll
All right.
get you again later.
Okay, good evening. So on the issue of the tourism tax increase, from the chamber perspective, we're concerned that it's a rush decision. I would agree with what Tom is saying. I think there needs to be more analysis. We need to be able to understand the potential effect to our current growth and how much additional funds may or may not be needed. That would basically be our stance on the tax today. We just think we need more information. It may be the right answer, it may not be. But certainly today, we don't have any idea how much is needed. I would just add additionally to that, that the Chamber appreciates the opportunity to work with the Tourism Commission on the future of tourism in Herman and Herman's Welcome Center. I want to thank everybody that's taken the time to call or send a note supporting the Chamber in our efforts to balance our commitments and resources so that we can fulfill our mission and vision and equally serve all of our members in the future. And we understand more than anybody how important that Welcome Center is to our visitors. And I assure you that we are committed to its success. But we would just ask that we slow down and make sure that we're making the right decision on a 2% increase.
Melissa, would you have any idea how we might structure some kind of economic impact study? Does the Chamber ever done that?
I have not done that, but there are many examples out there of communities that have put together an economic impact that we certainly can go look at and do right here in Herman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Scott, I can't read. That's the pipeline, and did you ever fill out another card?
I did.
Okay, and it says guest house and something ordinance. What does that say? Does it say tax or insurance or?
Well, you've already addressed the tax part, and I was going to address both of them. But go ahead and go on to the bread and breakfast ordinance.
Okay. Is Nancy Satry
Yeah.
come forward and talk about the lodging tax? Please.
Nancy Satray, 109 East 3rd Street. I've been doing this bed and breakfast now going on 26 years. I was one of them involved when the tourism tax was started. One of the reasons we went with the 3% at first was it was all new to everybody, and we knew down the road that it would have to go up to 5%. And I'm in favor. I was in favor of it the last time. The reason it failed last time was a lot of misinformation was passed around, not enough education. And so if it's going to be done this time in April, I feel that you need to, work on the education a lot and explain to people that it's not something that they're going to be paying if they live local. Personally, I think the 2% increase is not that much, but everybody has their different opinion on that. I can see what Tom is saying. I don't agree with it, but I can understand his opinion. But I think that it's time, and hopefully, that would free up some of the general fund money so we could use, it for other things like lighting and so forth. And certainly the Welcome Center is a concern too. And that's been around forever. And I'm one of them that's not very happy about the problems that it's having right now being financed. So I think for the future of it, to ensure the future of it, would be a good idea to look into, increasing that tax. That's it.
Thank you. Owen Stimmy, you want to speak about the tourism tax?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I've been introduced, so I have to tell you, Owen Stemmy's my name. My concern is, and I was one of those here early on, and I would beg to differ with Nancy with regard to, we knew we would have to increase it. And there was quite a bit of discussion whether it even needed to be 3% at that time, and I think that the chamber and there was a tourism group involved also, at that time, or about that time, in the early discussions. And so that's certainly enough to clear up some misinformation regarding whether or not salaries, that one of the ways it got sold to the businesses involved in tourism was the fact that it was not for salaries, or salary related expenses. It was strictly for the marketing and promotion, including the wide range of marketing options that are available, much more, including all the social media and that sort of thing today, which I think our executive director at the chamber and our tourism director with the city are doing a great job. One thing that I think, and maybe it's just because the general membership is not privy, but I don't think we have a real clear focus from the rank and file to get the bed and breakfast and the tourism industry as a whole, including restaurants and wineries and the whole gamut involved, is there's not a real clear, at least published or promoted budget or the plan for expenditures. And it's been lacking, and I don't know whether it's been improved. After grieving, after some interim tourism directors, there wasn't a very good accounting when questioned by the membership of the tourism community of the tourism director, how the budget was going and if we had any room in the budget for additional expenditures or different types of expenditures. So I think you can sense that I'm not really enthusiastic about it without knowing the full economic impact, and I think we're starting to see some activity, particularly in the traditional bed and breakfast, other than the Airbnb guest houses. The profitability and the success of those businesses, I think, are yet to be the future success of those businesses are to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I'll point out, or the point I'd like to make here is that our 2019 tourism lodging receipts have been tabulated, and we have we exceeded last year by 9%, and that's to the credit of the two ladies really sitting there and the entire tourism
Amen.
commission. Excuse me?
Amen.
And they had a lot, the whole group, and we did very well considering that the city was flooded for several months, that Amtrak didn't run for a month or more, that the RV park was closed for 5 or 6 weeks, events were canceled and so forth, and they still ended up with 9% more money than last year. So that's pretty amazing, really. I think that's incredible, and it could be the best single year they've had, considering all the obstacles. So that's a good thing. Owen, if you're talking about the expenditures of the tourism commission are not well understood, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
They're not-
yes.
Okay. Well, we have a tourism commission, and I know there's 2 members on the tourism commission that are board members of the chamber. All the information is open record. Trish, is it not? So if anybody ever wants to see it, you can ask Tammy, you can ask Melissa, you can ask Linda Miskell, you can ask Karen Held, or you can ask Trish, and you can get a complete copy of the financials and all the expenses and where they go. So I think it's very, very detailed, and maybe that's something you should try to get. So anyway, that's that. Let's see. Don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, is there any additional, I think I've got, well, wait a second. I don't want to leave anybody out, we've got some more folks. Mike Sloan, do you want to talk about the sales tax?
Yeah, I was going to talk about number 53.
Yes, Council.
That's a guest house, okay. Steve Granaman, oh, you didn't put on here what you
Yeah,
wanted.
guest house.
Guest house, okay. Ed Schmelz,
Oh, guest house.
okay, well, come on, okay, we'll get to that. Kevin, you put down B and B, we're not gonna discuss that.
I want to talk about the tax.
Well, come forward,
All
please.
right. Well, and I'll be short. You know, most of the time when I grew up, my grandpa always told me, a guy, when you start making money, watch out, the government's gonna come and get you. You've bragged for the last few weeks how great we're doing in the guest house business and tourism in general. It's not a time to rob us, just let us keep making money, or at least perceive that way. I think that 2% added would gives us 5, plus 8.1%. Plus, well, forget we got a penny that we're gonna pay for our new roads. 16%. That's a lot of money if you add all those up for somebody to spend $1,000 here to stay in a guest house, a bed and breakfast. It's a lot of money. And I don't think you guys have an idea what you wanna do with the money. I don't think Tammy or Melissa has came out and said, this is what I'm gonna do with the extra 2%. I know it's been thrown around, we're gonna take care of the Welcome Center. I've also talked to those folks, they're not out of money, they just need some help. Scottsdale, Arizona, there's a 1% bed and breakfast tax. Their theory is, we want them to come spend the night with us. So the restaurants that don't pay us sales tax, so the gift shops that don't pay a sales tax, a tourism sales tax. Everybody reaps the benefits. We all work together and we want to see them successful, so we are, okay? You guys are just taking money right now, adding it to the coffers, and you really don't have an idea what you're going to do with it. You're just going to throw it in there. I don't think it's fair. I think if you guys came up with a plan, I know we're pushing this stuff way too fast through. We need to take our time. It's a big, big industry. We need to take our time with this sales tax. You guys just don't vote on it tonight and tell all the folks out there to vote because the customers are going to pay for our town. You know something? Tammy, Melissa, you guys, tourism does a lot for this town. It's made it as beautiful and nice as it is. It's brought some great new folks into this town, okay? The city needs to pay their fair share of that. It's not the taxpayers, it's all of us. The city needs to pay their fair share of this to continue to keep this town in good shape. You guys helped me out there on that house I tore down. And you helped him, you've helped a lot of people. That's great. All we're doing is making the town nicer. You helped Mr. Dearberg do it. The city needs to help keep their town pretty too, not just taking it out of our back pocket. Whether it is a restaurant or a gift shop or an antique shop or anything. You guys need to share in that. And I think if you put together a good plan on this extra 2%, in 6 or 8 months, maybe we'd go ahead and support it. But I don't see a good plan. All I see is tax and spend. Are the guys making money? Let's tax him more. It's just not fair. It's not what it just, to me, it's just not fair. I wish you guys wouldn't vote on it tonight. Same with the other thing you're gonna vote on tonight. Big industries take a long time. Takes me a long time to plan out how to build a building, remodel a building. Seems like you guys have done this pretty much overnight and threw a lot of things against the wall, and a lot of them have fallen off, and that's usually how people do things. Let's throw 100 things on the wall. As long as we get 20 of them to stick, we've got a new ordinance or we've got a new bill. These are too important to do that with. Hope you guys would consider not voting on this tax tonight, and maybe even putting the bed and breakfast thing off instead of a Tuesday night in the middle of December at 6:30. Kind of a sneaky way of doing it, I think. We could have did this after the first of the year. At least let us digest it a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, appreciate that. And I think this is the last one, is Mr. Wilkins, do you want to talk about, which ordinance, what do you want to talk about?
The bed and breakfast ordinance,
Okay.
or the property rights ordinance.
Okay, that, is there anybody else that wants to talk about the 2% lodging tax increase? Okay. Alderman, what do you want to do? Do you have anything further to add?
I would like to point out to everybody that this whole 2% increase, that did not start here. That came about by people asking us to look for money, ways to cut money out of the budget, out of the general fund. That original deal with the tourism director's salary coming out of that was a direct result of that. We were approached by the Chamber of Commerce. We did not go to the Chamber of Commerce and say, what can we do for you? We were approached by them to help them with funding the tourism center. I happen to think that's a very good thing. Tourism centers are important to this town. Anybody that says people up here hate tourism is a damn liar. We all know how important tourism is to this town. We want to keep it growing and we want to keep it going. Tourism's great. It's Herman's future. But when people ask us for money, we have to try to find some way to find it. And that's where this 2% increase idea came from. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go, that's fine. But you have to remember that tourism fund, look at it as a pie. Every time somebody wants another piece out of there, the pieces get smaller and pretty soon you run out of pie and you're gonna need a bigger one. I wish you all would keep that in mind, please.
But didn't he just say the receipts were up 9%?
Yeah, they have gone up, absolutely. And they probably will continue to for some time, but everything has a crest. And we will eventually reach that.
But, so you're saying it's gone up 9%,
Brad,
but you need an
Brad.
additional 2%?
You want to come forward and speak now, then come on.
Well, you brought up a good point. We aren't talking about 2%. We're talking about 11%. Because receipts are up 9%. So what we are asking is just like we have to do every year. Work harder and think harder how to save money, rather than just because you can ask taxpayers, you can collect somebody else's money, it doesn't mean that's what you should. Receipts are up 9% and you can't figure out how to pay for some of these things? Like, we've done our part. It's up 9%. So you say you're all for tourism, but when you have special meetings during snowstorms in the middle of December and try to rush things through, it makes you wonder when you're doing both the sales tax. When Herman has one of the highest sales tax in all of the state. So it is no sir, that is true.
No, it's not
No,
true.
it's not.
Do you want to go to the state of Missouri website?
I've done
we're in the highest 85% category, okay? So when you add 2 more percent, which is the highest, you guys would ask for more because you love to tax people. But 5% is the most you can do by law. So 9% increase. Figure out how to do it. I mean, we gave you 9% more money this year.
Okay. 9%, I think it's gonna account for, in our coffers, maybe $9,000. It's not $60,000 that we need if we wanna help with the Welcome Center, or $30,000 or whatever. The other thing is, Brad, you combine the sales tax, overall sales tax, which you're wrong, with the lodging tax. And the sales tax, we're not even close to being the highest. I've seen sales taxes as high as 20%. And we're at 8.1% now.
Those are only in special districts with TIF.
Yeah.
So if you go to the Missouri State website, we are in the top 85% of sales tax. I have the graphic, if you like, I can bring it up to you.
Do you want to come back up and talk some more, or are you okay
Sure,
for now?
I mean, I can show you the graphic.
Well,
I mean,
we
we
have
go to
that.
the website
Brad,
right now.
Brad, that's not, we don't need that. We've already got it. I've got
You
it.
don't, you evidently have the wrong
Well,
information.
it's possible you have the wrong.
Well, so why don't we look at it? You could do it on your phone.
That's not what we're here, we got a long.
So we don't want to be
that's
right,
it.
we just want to
We
rush
already
things
have it.
through.
Thank you. Okay,
I
yes.
had a question for Dave when he said that people have come to him.
Tom, why don't you come back forward?
Come on, Tom.
Anyway, you said you've had people come to you to think that they need to free up money in the general fund Can you explain more? I mean, right now, every year, and thankfully, the city budgets their money, and they've budgeted again for the next year. What are these people asking to get freed up so they can buy what with it,
Well, when we were looking at the streets,
right?
there was a lot of different ideas about, well, you could use this money for this money for this money for this. You
Brad?
don't need to spend this money here, you don't need to spend
Just
it
a second.
here.
Brant,
That's hard to do.
if you're gonna
When you
go
have a
around the
budget.
room, you're disturbing other people,
Oh.
please
Well,
sit down
we've
and we'll
done
let you
this.
come up again.
Right, it's hard to
and-
find this
and
money.
bring that.
I understand.
And people
Please
have a lot of
ask the floor.
suggestions on how to free this money up. The man sitting next to me campaigned on trying to find some of this money. And he's done a pretty good job here and there looking for stuff. One of the ones he's come up with was the tourism director's salary is paid out of the general fund. Now, I'd be willing to bet you, before this all started, about 75% of this town had no idea, probably a higher number of that the tourism director's salary is coming out of that general fund and not out of the tourism fund. I happen to think that's money well spent.
Right.
But the average taxpayer may not think so. We looked at taking it out, taking part of it out, doing it gradually, a lot of different ways.
Right.
And then, when we were approached by the chamber for help with the tourism center, it seemed a good time that this 2% could be used for both of those items.
So-
That doesn't necessarily mean it will, but first it would have to pass. First, it's gotta go before the voters.
Well, and that's
There's a
my
lot of
question
ifs.
then. So basically, that 2% freed up money to go to the chamber. You're not looking at it to go to the streets or to the park. When you said people approached you to free up money, I wanted to know what you wanted to spend that extra money
I
on.
know, we haven't freed it up yet.
I know.
The 2%, if it's passed by the voters,
Right.
they're the ones that's gonna vote for it. That 2% will go to tourism, not to the chamber. It'll go to our tourism director's
Right.
budget. And if part of that budget is to assist with the welcome center, part of that budget, that 2% will go to that. And hopefully, if it passes, then we can free up the general fund, which is the taxpayers' money, so we'll have more money available to increase street lightings or add something extra, do something extra with the money that we've
Right.
taken away from the voters.
Well, and I think it would behoove you to have a plan for that instead of, well, we might spend it on this or that. I think if you,
Tom, just as a shot,
yeah,
increase tourism Sunday through Thursday. You know, you gotta market
right,
for those particular people.
Right.
Get them here for day trips, get them here for overnight trips.
exactly.
Increase awareness about our museums, so people come here to look.
I'm
at
all in
things they
favor of
don't
marketing.
see. These are things that, subjects have been broached about using this money for. These are things, our people do a fantastic job with the money they have, they
But-
really do.
You're contradicting yourself then by saying you're freeing up money from the from the general fund.
The general fund the tourism fund is for tourism.
Exactly.
It's the.
So you're not freeing up money unless
The
you.
tourism director's salary would free up that money.
Right.
Right.
I mean, there is an
Maybe we
opinion,
wanna
and it's not
explain that
an unreasonable
again.
one, that tourism fund
Let's
should be
use an
self-sufficient.
example. Let's say that the 2% raises $125,000.
Right.
We use, let's say, 60,000 or half of it for the welcome center. Let's just, I
Right.
don't know if that's, but let's just say that as an example. The other 65,000 or whatever could then be used to pay for the tourism director's salary. So it no longer has to come out of the general fund. It's now paid for out of the tourism tax receipts like it was supposed to. So that's how it saves money.
Well, I understand
Okay.
that part of it. I just want to know what you're going to spend
I can address that.
the general fund money.
Trish wants to.
I can address the things that the things that we had to cut out of the budget this year because we did not have money in general revenue. Primarily, Marlin, the police department, right? His cop car, that was $36,000 plus a few extra $1,000 for all the equipment on it and everything, had to be cut. He didn't get his car, and I don't know how he's gonna get it next year. Marlon could also speak to the fact that the surrounding communities have all, many of them, have received this new tax called the Prop P, in which they have significantly raised the base salary of all of their police officers. Am I right so far? Yes. And so he is desperately worried about losing our officers because we can no longer compete, and we haven't had the money to give them any raises. We looked at raising our loggers' retirement in order to entice them, didn't have the money to do that either. And that's just the police department. That's not counting all the new computers and equipment that City Hall needs. The community center is sinking. We need to put another $20,000 in peering in that, which we don't have. The cemetery wants money every year for restoration. We cut the HVAC units because we didn't have enough money, all kinds of things like that. There's lots of places where we could use $68,000.
So what you're gonna do is put that burden on the tourist, correct?
No.
Yes. To raise that money, instead of putting the burden on the city, you're gonna put it on the tourist. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, I'm just saying that that's where you're
I
looking
guess
for
it
the
could be
additional
phrased that way,
income.
Tom, yes, it could.
Yeah, okay, but
Washington really likes that.
anyway, again, you know, I think,
Honestly, this conversation started before they even talked about raising the tourism tax. They were already talking about moving the salary, so they can move the salary and not raise the tax.
that's fine too. But it needs to be, I think, explained to the people, you know, what your purpose is. You know, and it's like, well, we might. We don't want to hear that. We want some kind of plan. Okay, if we get the extra money, we can buy a new police car. Or if we get the extra money, we can improve City Hall. I mean, you know, those are the things I think is the problem a lot of times with, you know, people want to know what their money is going to go for.
That's understandable.
And I think at times, me included, have failed that in the past, and I just think it needs to be, you know, I hate that word transparent, but, you know, you need to have a plan, you need to have what you're gonna do with it, and then present that as a plan, and we've mentioned that to many people. If you want something, come up here with a plan.
Well, this may have been slightly rushed because they're trying to meet the window.
I understand that, sure.
April election.
But there'll be another election too.
And that may be what we have to do, Tom.
Yeah.
You know,
August and November also.
Okay, okay.
August too.
I'm sorry.
that's fine, but
Okay. Brent,
Yeah,
would you send that to Trish Haney?
yeah.
So she can look at it, we can.
You can go to the state of Missouri website though, because it says higher sales tax than 85% of Missouri localities.
We will do that.
Okay, so that was different though
I
than
have
what
it
you
by
said.
state, I have it by city, and I have it by tax. There's an overall sales tax, and then there are add-on taxes. All along the way, some of them have 6 or 8. You have to add them across to see what the sales tax would be.
But this is from the state, so you would think
That's
they would
where it
be
is.
correct.
So is this.
We had all that information back in April when we
Yep.
did the proposed 7/8 inch sales
please-
tax.
And all of those things we didn't have money for. I
Right.
thought the city was doing really well. Like you always write in the newspaper how well the city's doing. How come we don't have money for these things?
That's the utilities that are doing well.
Ah,
The general
thank
fund is
you.
completely separate.
Because of
Okay.
our meter charge, we're doing so well. It should be lower.
Okay,
Just add them up.
Ed, have you been up to speed? Oh, well, I'll tell you what, are we done with the sales tax? We were up here. Do the aldermen want to say any more?
Well, from what I'm hearing, I think maybe we should table it and go back to the drawing board and make sure that you can.
That's what we'll do. We'll table that issue until the next meeting, which I think is January 13th. We'll reevaluate it and put it on the agenda then if it makes sense.
Well, I think listen to her, we need to get figures from them, exactly what they need before you can figure what you're gonna
well,
get.
we've been trying to get those for 2 months.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't know how you can move all the way forward.
And that's
until you
fine. I
have
mean,
those
Tom
figures.
mentioned an economic impact statement. I'm not sure how you go about that. I mean, let's
Right.
find out and do it.
I think at this point, what it
Mr.
boils
Mayor.
down to,
Excuse me, please. Melissa is our chamber director. Everybody's been saying the chamber's going out of business. The chamber needs money, the chamber this, the chamber that. Would you please step up there and tell us that we are going out of money, or we do not have any money?
She just said that. She'll get a chance to come back again. Thanks, Kevin. We're in the process of deciding what we're gonna do up here. It seems to me that what we need to do is separate these issues completely. The 2% additional lodging tax needs to be considered in light of what we're gonna do with it, and you have a couple of options. If it goes 2%, you have a 2% option, a 1% option, and no increase. If there's no increase, then you're gonna have to decide what to do with the tourism director's salary from existing funds. And I think the other plan ought to be for the other options. So if we can get that together and it doesn't require really the chamber, it would be nice to get all that information. We'll try to get the best we can. But if we can't get it, we're gonna have to move forward anyway without it, or put this off to another election. So we're gonna table it and decide what we wanna do.
Well, if we're gonna get all that information, there's no way we're gonna get it on this.
Well, then we'll decide between now and January 13th, we're gonna do it at a different election. Okay, well, we can at least have more than 2 minutes up here to decide. Okay. All right, let's see, the next item of business is number 19, is that what we do? Yeah.
Number 19,
Yeah,
53.
yeah, 53, I'm sorry.
the guest house.
Yeah.
All right, so on for first reading, bill number 2019-53, an ordinance to amend the Herman Municipal Code to provide that bed and breakfast inns, guest houses, vacation rentals, or homes, and any other non-owner occupied lodging establishments, bed and breakfast inns and guest houses, shall be allowed in the R2 and R3 zoning districts by conditional use permit only, and to establish regulations for all new and existing bed and breakfast inns and guest houses in all zoning districts.
Okay, Alderman, do you have any things you want to talk about at this point, or should we go and let them speak and then come back?
Let us
Okay. Okay, here we go. These may not be completely in order, but Steve Graneman, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. Okay, guys, I guess my main concern with this ordinance is, and I would like to ask a question on this first. What is the proposed reasoning for changing it in the R2 and R3 district zones from a permitted use to a conditional use permit? What is the reasoning for that push?
Well, that would be necessary, I believe, to, so that we can have inspections and we can get the fire extinguishers and that sort of thing, make sure we have that. It's just all safety issues.
But safety issues are very simple. If you want to get a permit, you give them an itemized list and say, hey, you need to do this, 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 we'll grant you a permit. A conditional use permit is totally different than that. But I would like to know what is the purpose
It's a
of this?
permit based on those same conditions, is what it's called, that's what we call it.
Right, but
What
if
do you want us to call it?
the conditional use permit is far different than that,
What
in
do you
my
want us to
opinion.
call the permit?
It's a permit. It's a allowed usage in R2 and R3 as it stands right now, correct? So what is the change for the going to the conditional use permit? I've heard some things thrown around that it was,
Well, I understand this question, and I think I mentioned this before, but I'll do it again. The way I have always viewed this ordinance is that it's really two ordinances, or there's two main parts to it. Part one is the changing of bed and breakfast inns and guest houses from permitted uses to conditional uses in R2 and R3. Part two is the establishment of this permit requirement and inspection standards, et cetera, for all bed and breakfast inns and guest houses, whether they're in R1, R2, R3, C1, C2, whether they need a conditional use permit or not. I understand your question.
so, but I'm asking, what's the push for this from switching from a permitted use, where I can definitely tell anybody, any of my clients that come in and say, hey, I want to start up a guest house in this R2 zone, and I could say, yes, you can definitely do that, provided you do this. On a conditional use permit, that's not the case, okay? It changes at that point, because
Why is it
it
not?
comes back to like the same way R1 was. it comes back to the board for you guys to approve. You know, any adjoining neighbors can come in and vote on it. So it's a conditional use permit then. I can no longer tell people that, yes, you can definitely do this. If I've got one of the guest house owners in here comes up to me and says, hey, Steve, I want you to sell my property for me. And I've got a prospective buyer there. They've worked hard building their business up. And now this buyer comes in and says, can I operate a guest house in here? My answer is going to have to be maybe. I don't know anymore because it's a conditional use permit.
Well, I think that's covered in here. And it
It's
says,
not all covered.
it says that you can do that as long as the new owner starts it off this same use within 6 months. If he waits 3 years or 5 years, it's too late. But if, like you said in your example, if he wants to come in and says, can I do this? The answer is, well, yeah, you can. But you
What's
got to
going to
file
be the
within 6
procedure
months.
for that?
Well, it's the same as it's always been. That's the way it is now.
Well, then why are we changing it from a permitted use
That
to a
one
conditional?
item is the same.
It's so if somebody has a house that doesn't have it, they're taking that property.
You get your
right
chance,
back.
Brad. You get your chance.
That's what I'm saying. You're trying to control property owners' rights on what they can do and what they cannot do. It goes to you guys then at that point in time. Am I correct?
Well, it was conditional use before. No.
Not in R2, it wasn't.
Brad, please.
R2 and R3 it was not. It's a permitted use in R2
What
and
is the
R3.
history?
Yeah, shut up for a little bit and let him talk.
The history is, as we sit here today, at this moment, guest houses and bed and breakfast inns are permitted uses in R2 and R3.
Correct.
And the history is, the board had recommended reclassifying them as prohibited uses, and that went to the Planning and Zoning Commission back in the spring.
And I was at that meeting also.
There were a lot of people that showed up at the Planning and Zoning Commission who said, don't just ban guest houses and bed and breakfast inns in R2 and R3. All we want to see is people regulated and everybody following the same rules, and not some of us following the rules and some of us not following the rules. And so then Susan's committee was formed and did the research and the meetings, et cetera, and it was decided or proposed along the way to change it from being a prohibited use in R2 and R3 to a conditional use permit required in R2 and R3, which is what is.
Right, but it's right, as of right now, it's a permitted use, correct?
Right.
So if we take that out and we say, no, it's a conditional use now, you have to get a conditional use permit. You're taking away the rights of the property owners, guys, is what you're doing. Because you're making it, okay, even if you go by all these guidelines here, we may not approve that, okay? I can no longer say that you can definitely
Well, I
run.
think it actually works in the opposite. I think what we're saying
No,
is
it
if you
doesn't.
do these things, then you're gonna get your permit. Now, if you don't do them, that's what's the reason for part of this. If you don't do them, then you may not. You're gonna have to comply with these things that the committee that Susan had came up with.
Well, then why wouldn't we already have a conditional use permit then? If you want to, but you can
It's not
definitely get
required.
a permit.
See, that's not required now.
If I wanted to come in and just start up, buy a house in town in R2 or R3, do I not have to come to you guys to get a business license and all these other items?
You have to have a business
Yeah,
license.
and so that's a condition that I have to meet. So it's a permitted use,
If
provided that the conditional portion of it is what you guys are taking away. That's what I'm trying to get across. What is the procedure on this if I would come into you, if it went to conditional use permit, what is the procedure for me to get a permit to operate a guest house? After that.
It's what this ordinance is all about.
Do I have to come in front of the board here to apply for it, and then people can come in and talk about it the same way as
No, you
what
get
it
a
was before?
permit based on these X number of things that the ordinance inspector will come and check, and if you have them in place, you get the permit.
That's
It's
just,
by ordinance.
but it's not the same.
It's by ordinance.
If Steve has a client who comes to town and is looking for a property to buy, to turn into a guest house or a bed and breakfast inn, and there is a property that has been used up until now as a residence, let's say, a family lives there, and they've got it listed for sale, and his client comes and says, I want to buy that, but I want to make it a guest house. Steve would tell that client that he would have to get a business license, and he would tell that client that he has to apply for a conditional use permit to operate a guest house in R2 or R3. And
So
he
it's
would-
just right there, conditional, it's a maybe.
and he would tell the client that he has to also apply for the guest house permit and submit to the inspections, et cetera, that's in proposed new 420-050. So there's the, really 3 licenses or permits that his client would need. And I think your question is centered on the conditional use permit, third of what I just said.
Right. Yeah, so that's,
Excuse me, Steve. I have a quick question on this here, because I'm getting a little turned around. Now, right now, a conditional use permit, don't you have to go before planning and zoning? Now, I just heard here that you don't have to do that with these new ones. Am I wrong? What he's asking is if one of his clients follows the rules in here, does he just come in here and get the conditional use permit? Is he gonna have to go before these boards and apply for it?
is it a guarantee that somebody will get that?
It's the same, what he's talking about, the conditional use permit, or these permits that show up on the agenda once every now and then for renewals. That they show up on the agenda once every now and then for renewals, they come up for a year, we say, Chief, has there been any problems? He says, no, there hasn't been any problems, and we renew it for another year. The way all those started was to get the conditional use permit. For instance, if somebody had a bed and breakfast inn or guest house in R1, they would have to go through this. They have to file an application for a conditional use permit, and then the first hearing is at planning and zoning. And planning and zoning makes a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen, yea or nay, and what conditions should be put on it. And then the Board of Aldermen has a hearing to ultimately decide whether to grant that permit.
And so the answer to his question is, no, it's not guaranteed.
Right.
Well, no, it's not guaranteed. You're right.
We got a problem there, guys.
Yeah.
I did not read that.
We've got to get some of
The
that.
permit is not for a year,
Hmm?
and the permit is not for a year.
6 months?
It's for such period of time as the Board of Aldermen shall determine, and 95% of them were for a year until this last year when they renewed them up until January 1st of 2020 in anticipation
So
of all
Steve
this.
has a valid point that you can change the game in the middle of the game.
That's right.
Sean, I have a question. The way it is, under this ordinance, will they have to go to planning and zoning? Or will they just come in and fill out an application?
That's what I'm trying to find out. They just said they have to go to planning and zoning.
That's why I want to know what the procedure is. If somebody wants to come in,
Because I was.
start up a guest house in an R2 or R3, what do they have to do?
A guest house or a bed and breakfast inn does not have to go to planning and zoning to get the guest house permit, the thing that we've been spending 95% of our time talking about with the inspections and the flashlights, et cetera, et cetera. If you have somebody that wants a new guest house or bed and breakfast inn in R2 or R3, yes, they do have to go through planning and zoning first and get a conditional use permit. This is the evolution of what had started as this board's recommendation to make it a prohibited use. And that recommendation was sent to planning and zoning in the spring, who came back and said, no, don't make it a prohibited use. Just enact some regulations and make it a conditional use.
Okay, so basically,
You guys are
now,
like drawing board.
no.
It's terrible. You guys can't even keep it straight up there, Bob. Dave even asked a great question a minute ago.
We're gonna get them all. You're gonna get a chance.
Just let the man talk. I will.
I am. Well, he's got the floor though, Kevin. When it's your time, you can come up and talk.
So,
My question is this, and I think the answer is, to your question, is if somebody comes in, you were talking about if somebody buys one, or they really don't have to go to planning and zoning.
No.
Okay.
It's
If
not a
brand new
condition.
one, and we've had, we have a few, we have had about 10 in the last
They're getting
year.
less and less all the time. So,
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
running out of areas where we can do this.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Well, if it's a brand new one time, they'll have to go to planning and zoning, am I right? Is that correct?
In R2 or R3.
In R2
But I
or
still- I
R3.
cannot
Not in-
guarantee that.
not in
That wouldn't be an
commercial.
every year renewal?
Brant, please.
It would,
Please.
so it'd be every year.
Well, yeah.
We don't have to go to planning and zoning every year.
No, you just one time to planning and zoning. So-
But it's still up for vote after that every year though, too?
No, you get
I
your
mean,
permit.
but when you renew your permit, does it
You
have to
get
come
your-
back in front of the board?
They all do. That's as long as there's no problem, then we ask them. And chief,
But what if
any
there are
problems?
problems? So somebody invests a ton of money into a
If there are
house.
problems, that's the whole purpose of the system.
You and I know, all of us know, there's some people that, yeah, they don't necessarily want a guest house right next to them.
Yeah,
And
but
maybe they
that's
just
not-
want to
That's
complain
not the
about
kind
it.
of complaints we look for.
Well, I'm
The
saying, but
complaints
it
of
could happen.
real disturbance.
I've seen it happen, okay? I've seen stuff like that happen, you know?
Okay, let
So,
Steve talk.
and I've heard different things, that this is taken away from long-term housing in Herman, things of that nature, okay? It's pushing the market values up too high on median sales prices or average sales prices in town. And
Is there any way we can go on the first? Never. Stand by, minute.
Sure.
Well, we could. We could delete sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 from the bill.
Just stand by. Okay. Hold on, that's it, right here. And what would that do? That just means we don't have to go to planning and zoning.
Well-
The first one, we go straight to an either. We're trying to make sure that
I would just like to see
this is unnecessary and we don't need it.
Yeah, I would like to
Let
see
me go
it as
through
a
it section by section.
permitted use.
And the words planning and zoning commission are not in here. You're not gonna read those, but I'll tell you what it means. So section 1, currently, R2 Family Residential District has bed and breakfast, inns, and guest houses as permitted uses. And section 1 is going to change, per this draft, to say that only bed and breakfast, inns, and guest houses that were in use as of tonight can continue as conditional or permitted uses, and if we have a new one come in that needs a conditional use permit, like you're talking about, which means they have to go through planning and zoning and then come here for that conditional use permit. Section 2 is the section that establishes what I just said. It says, bed and breakfast, inns, guest houses, vacation rentals, etc. shall be conditional uses in the R2 two-family residential district. That means to get a conditional use permit, they have to go through planning and zoning and then come here. And then sections 3 and 4 are just the same as 1 and 2 except for R3 and not R2. Section 3 says only bed and breakfast inns and guest houses which were in effect as of tonight could continue on as a permitted use. And section 4 says that conditional use permits and bed and breakfast inns, new ones, will require a conditional use permit, which means they have to go through planning and zoning. Section 5 was just thrown in there because you always should state the zoning class where a use is a permitted use first. And so R1, not a permitted use after this. R2, not a permitted use after this. R3, not a permitted use after this. C1, yes, it is a permitted use, and so that's what section 5 says here.
So, section 3 is the section that says, well, I guess the simple way to ask the question is there any way to skip planning and zoning, that phase? Because after the one time, they don't have to go there anymore. They just go through the regular permitting process. So it would be nice, please, and whoever's in the back, let us talk. So it would be nice if we could just start off with going through the permitting process rather than the conditional use permit. And the second question, do all conditional use permits always have to start with planning and zoning?
All conditional use permits must start at planning and zoning.
Okay, is there any way to skip that and go straight to the permitting process? So give me an example. A new person comes in to Steve, says, I'm thinking about buying a house, and I want to know if I can use it for a guest house, and he says, you have to go and apply for a permit and have an inspection and pay the fees.
But the answer is yes, though. The answer is yes, you do this and you can have it. You
Right,
can do a permit.
That's what we're trying, is
That's
there a way
where
to do
we're
that?
supposed to be.
That's where, yeah, that's where I think we should be. Guys, we got to, I mean, all this is doing is pushing investors away.
Well,
Okay.
let's get it right, so we can understand.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do that you can think of, or is that putting you on the spot quite a bit?
No, absolutely not. The way to accomplish that is to do nothing.
Leave it as it is.
With respect to changing the R2 and R3 zoning permitted use classifications. You know, if all you guys want to do is establish the guest house permit with the inspections and the flashlights and the fire
No
extinguishers.
flashlights.
No flashlight, God, don't bring a flashlight.
We can edit this ordinance, like I said, by just eliminating sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so the ordinance only becomes sections 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And I don't think anybody here, you know, guest house owners have any issues with safety, reasonable safety things. I'm gonna leave that up to them because I'm not a guest house owner.
I just want to, I think history is important because, you know, when clients ask me tough questions or I haven't talked to them in 2 months or whatever, I always try to remember back to where we came from. The ordinance that we sent to planning and zoning back in March was an ordinance to amend the Herman Municipal Code to prohibit bed and breakfast inns, guest houses, vacation rentals, or homes, and any other non-occupied lodging establishments in residential zoning classes. And so, you know, this was already sort of a compromise from that initial position, per P&Z's recommendation. But if you want to go further and take out, like I said, sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can certainly do that.
So they would come to the city, get an application, and fill it out, and we would then go and inspect them. And if they had all of the safety stuff that's required and meet the other criterion, presumably they would be approved. And so basically you're skipping planning and zoning.
Well, if you want these
If we did-
people to follow the rules, you can't make the rules too complicated.
No,
I'm sorry, I apologize to everyone. I did not realize this was going to have to go through planning and zoning when we moved to the other area. Conditional use meant to me, we gave you a list of conditions. If you met them through the inspection,
Permitted use.
I guess I'm slipping a little bit.
That's a
okay,
permitted use in my
so
opinion.
would that satisfy your concern?
Yeah, I think it would be great. And, you know,
Okay.
we're not changing, it's a permitted use in R2 and R3. You know, you guys, you know, safety regulations and that was my takeaway from the P&Z meeting back in March too, was that we were throwing the zoning issues off the table and saying, no, that's not what this is about. This is a more regulatory issue rather than a zoning issue. So,
It's a safety issue and we need to stick with that.
yeah, and that's all it needs to be.
Safety's not gonna go away.
No, and I don't think anybody will argue with you guys on that. You know,
Okay.
I definitely won't. I mean, we want safe houses for people to stay in.
But the rest of this is okay if we could get
If
by.
we get rid of the conditional use permit and have it as a permitted use in R2 and R3,
Okay, Steve,
all right?
thank you.
Thank you guys.
If you look at page
All right.
477, it says
Susan?
application for a special, a conditional use permit. Do we need to do anything with that on section 7? Is that okay?
Well, yeah, you're right, we'd have to fix that, to take that reference to conditional use permit out. Yes.
Yeah, it has to come
So
out
with
too.
that, and then, so then E would also, that whole section 7 would come up, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on, because we have other people who want to talk. Ed, where's Ed? Come forward. State your name.
Ed Schmeltz.
Okay, Ed.
Okay. Unfortunately, Steve made a lot of the comments I was going to make, so I'll make this pretty quick and brief.
Okay.
To be honest, when this ordinance first came about, I always look at ordinance as a cause and effect. You know, usually we're establishing an ordinance to fix a problem. And that's what I was kind of confused about at first is, well, what problem are we fixing? You know, and then the safety issue keeps getting brought up. You know, safety, 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 which is fine. You know, like, you know, nobody wants to be on the front page of the paper that 4 people got killed in their guest house because they didn't have a smoke alarm, CO2 detector, you know, with gas appliances. Nobody wants to do that. It kills everybody. kills every guest house owner, kills every restaurant owner. It's not good for anybody. So I think we're all 100% on board with the safety. But on the surface, when I first looked at it, it looked like, well, they're really trying to limit guest houses. We're really trying to, crack down on guest houses. And then after sitting here for a little bit, well, maybe they're not trying to crack down on guest houses and eliminate them. But then I hear that a few months ago, there was an ordinance to prohibit them. So now it does seem like we're trying to get rid of guest houses. And I guess I'm really looking for somebody to explain to me why.
Because we were approached by some of our guest house owners whose rooms were starting to not get filled up.
That's not the government's
No, I'm
job.
serious about that,
That's
guys.
not
You
the
can,
government's job.
I don't give a damn if you believe it or not, it's the truth. They asked us to look at putting a moratorium on anymore.
Okay.
That's how this all started.
That's not the government's
Well, and
job.
that's capitalism. I mean, I have 9 houses up here. I've invested over $2 million in this community, and we probably average 42 to 45 weekends a year full in our places. And if I had 9 more, they would be full the exact same amount. So maybe they're not running them correctly, but and I get it. But
Yeah, there was more than that too.
I look at guest houses as being self-limiting. If they exceed the market, the ones, the extras will go away on their own.
right, and exactly, it's not the city's problem.
No, it's not. But let me say this, add to Dave's, and please, listen, we're gonna have to keep it quiet in the back because we give one person a chance to talk at a time. And if you don't keep it down, then we're gonna have to take other measures. Because we have to maintain order and let Ed talk. And let the alderman talk, it's our meeting. Now, we had the superintendent of schools and other people come forward and say, they thought that the guest house was becoming a problem. There were too many of them. But this wasn't 2 months ago. This was probably a year ago, or 10 or 12 months ago. And when it went to planning and zoning, I think Dave gave the whole history. Planning and zoning and the people there did not think that it was necessary to ban it. They thought that a conditional use permit, and the word conditional use permit is in their recommendation to this board, to use a conditional use permit to make sure they comply. Okay, now we get to this point and we find out we can do this probably without them. Okay, but that's not what we were sent from planning and zoning. So, go
okay.
ahead.
And I know the conditional use permit has already been beaten to dead horse, but as an investor, if I'm looking at an R2 or R3 property and they say, well, it's a conditional use permit, well, that really deters me because that's a whole long process. I mean, I could go to the city, even though everything's in here on what your uses are going to be, I could come in here, a neighbor could say, well, that house is too close to mine, I would like a tree buffer. I would like this, I would like a fence, I would like this. Conditional use, you guys can do whatever, you have free reign to do whatever you want. And we've already talked about this, I get it, we're trying to eliminate that, but I'm just trying to reiterate the point that I really don't agree with the conditional use being the right way. Is there a way to put that in the business license? You have to get an inspection. I don't know, I'm just...
Well, it is it a permit, you'll have to get an inspection, and what you're getting at is a problem, it's a different problem. It's a nuisance problem. And that's not in you, this has nothing to do with that. But if everything runs smoothly, then there is no nuisance and there's not a problem. But if it doesn't, sometimes, there can be a perceived nuisance and there can be a problem. That's not in here. We're just trying to make them safe with this ordinance. It's evolved. It's evolved now to the point where conditional use permits maybe are not necessarily required to get the safety issue through. I don't know what the aldermen feel, how they feel about that if we take it out. But at this point, we need to have the safety issues are paramount. If we have a issue where we have a fire or some other kind of catastrophe, people are killed and so on, and we're going to end up looking pretty bad, especially if they find out we have no ordinances, we have no inspections, we don't require insurance. We really just kind of stuck our head in the sand.
I couldn't agree more with the safety, and I mean, I'll say it over and over, safety, 100% agree, could not disagree one bit with safety. But we're not having issues with safety. If somebody could name, if somebody could name me some safety issues we've had that we have to use to rush this meeting a week after we just had a meeting last week, to try to push this through by the first of the year, I implore you, please, can we just take our time with this? I don't understand why we have to have special meetings and push this through for safety purposes when we're not having safety issues.
Well, because
Let's
we
take
have
our time.
inspections we have to have, and we have 131 businesses that are gonna have to be inspected by some date certain, sometime. So if we spend a month or two now, extra time that we don't need to, it's better to keep this process moving forward with meetings like tonight and continue to move on.
But to have a meeting every week, to push it,
Well,
oh,
as it turns,
we're rushing it for no good reason. I mean,
well, there is a good reason, and that's to get the business taken care of. If we have other things tonight that we had to do anyway, we're very fortunate that we actually scheduled this meeting, because we're gonna have an issue in a minute that is critical to the gas company. We're gonna have to have that. So it's never good just to postpone something if you don't have to postpone it.
well, I would rather postpone it than push forward with incorrect information and not having everything exactly ironed out. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you, Ed. Okay, Mike, do you have anything you wanna say, or?
Mike Sloan, First Street, Herman, Missouri. So, I want to thank you for having the opportunity to have discussion tonight. And I've learned a lot tonight, and I tell you what, Steve, thank you for being here. Many others, great comments. And I came here tonight, I really didn't want to be here tonight. I got other things to do like everybody else. When it's 7.5 days before Christmas, and I felt like coming tonight was just going to be a waste of time, because not always things are talked about, but they're not always, they don't seem to fit, they don't seem to take place. And I think after hearing conversations tonight with some of the comments that people are making, I think you as a board are listening, and I appreciate that. I think you need to look at this and rewrite this. I don't think this is something you can vote on tonight. I don't see how you could do it tonight, and I certainly don't think you could do it in 2 readings. It's going to take some time. And just like this guy said, you need to look at this in January, regardless, because you know what, this lodging issue, I mean, it's a $6.5 million or $6.3 million event. And that's a lot of money to take place and alternate that. So I think you need to look at this and take a little more time based on the comments tonight and get through this year. One of the things that I've heard the mayor say too is by having this process, and it's all about safety, but I don't know that safety issues discriminate if it is a lodging or a non-lodging, or if it's a owner-occupied or non-owner occupied. Safety is across the board, and I think you need to look at that across the board. It's just not, when there's a safety issue, it doesn't have no barriers. It can be anything or all the above, owner occupied or non-owner occupied. And I think it needs to be on a level playing field, and it might be, I hope it is. I also know that when you talk about safety, and if I was to try to sell something based on a safety factor, that's not really a sellable item. You can't sell something because it's safe. Maybe if you're in the car business, but when you're in the lodging business or the city of Herman business, in order to sell something, a safety factor, of course we all have it and we all know it and we all want it, but you can't really put it out there that my bed or my lodging is more safety than somebody else's. You can't do it. There's no way to do it. And if there was a way to do it, people would be doing it. They'd be doing it. So you cannot sell the fact or the opinion that people will come to Herman and spend the night in a lodging because it's safe. It won't happen because of that. A lot of the other comments tonight have already been said. And again, I just think that you need to table this again and come back after the first of the year and present some of the comments that have been made tonight back in the ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Couple, I guess, comments. B&Bs, I think you're referring to putting B&Bs in this ordinance, and the reason they're not in there is because we have to have a public hearing, which is scheduled for the 13th of January on B&Bs, and we have to have in hotels or whatever else goes in there. The people that have those businesses or want to know about those businesses have a right to come and talk, just like y'all are. So we have to do that first. We couldn't just add it. It wasn't that simple. So that I think levels the playing field, because everybody will be under the same rules. The other thing that I think that's important to understand, and for Mike and everybody, is that we started this process a long time ago. But a month or more ago, we had a workshop, and we had a lot of people come and ask a lot of questions, and we went over this item by item, step by step, and we made some changes. Last week, we ended up having our public hearing, and we have more questions and more comments. We made the changes, and nobody brought up the fact that conditional use permits were offensive and so forth.
I did.
Yeah, you were on
It's a
board.
property rights
Thank you.
issue. I was on it, of course.
Okay. Thanks, Brad, we appreciate it. Anyway, so it has been something we've worked on. If you had mentioned this last time, we would have been that far ahead. So if there's anything else besides the conditional use permit after we're done here, we'll make a change and we'll move forward. But that's the only way we can get things systematically. It's a process, okay? And I appreciate that, so thanks, Mike. Melissa, did you want to say any more, or are you good with what?
Yes.
Okay, come forward and please.
Come on down.
Come on down. I just have about 15 points. It'll be nice. I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
New page.
So, I just wanted to say that we 100% support our members that have concerns with the additional regulations to their businesses. We did take a recent survey, and from what I'm hearing tonight, we still have a lot of businesses that do not agree with this ordinance. Just to go on to say, it's clear that our lodging businesses, we already have very safe practices and procedures in place. There's been no safety reports in the last year to our police department. So I just want to thank all of our lodgers for already being safe. You guys are taking care of our guests. And we are all united to make sure that safety is a priority. With that being said, we would ask that future ordinances be given the proper time and communication needed so that our businesses have an educated voice much earlier in the process. Most of the changes that we made last week and now even tonight should have been considered much earlier. We further recommend the involvement of our dedicated and qualified safety personnel with the fire and police departments anytime safety regulation is discussed. We support a recommendation made by our member Mike Sloan that a committee be formed that includes these and other safety professionals as it relates to the enforcement and compliance of all safety requirements of our lodging community. We feel this committee could be of great support and help to the new code enforcement officer in her new role. Lastly, thank you all for your time this evening. On behalf of the chamber, I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. And I look forward to working with the city in 2020 on future initiatives that further support Herman's growth and address any challenge that growth might bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I should say here that as far as the committee goes, we did form a committee, we did have both interviews. Susan had that a number of meetings with people in the business, and the initial group of suggestions here came from them. So we did have a committee. I don't know that another committee is necessarily gonna be that helpful since we've gone through this process. The only thing I'm asking is that if you have anything besides, anything else that we need to know about, bring it forward. And you mentioned, Melissa, you have a safety procedure or some kind of safety information for your bed and breakfast,
There's not any reports with the police department of any safety issues.
Does the
this year.
chamber have any kind of criterion or protocol regarding safety?
We do have a checklist that we give our new lodging businesses, and we have that available to our lodging members.
Okay.
And it's based on BVIM guidelines that already exist for the lodging community.
And
Who's BBIM?
Bed and breakfast.
Inns of Missouri.
Inns of Missouri.
Okay.
Statewide organization.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Tom Durham, do you want to come forward, or have you covered your ordinance?
Well, in defense or whatever, the safety issue, we're not trying as a group, you guys, us, to advertise we're the safest place in the world. I think it all started off with our guests come to Herman with an expectation of being safe. It's just an expectation that when they go to somewhere, the place is going to be safe. If they're staying, when they're walking the streets, it's going to be safe. So I think it's just that we want the guests to have that expectation, and therefore I think it's important that you do this. And also that the inspections are so important to have certain things, and you've covered them in this deal. And I've told a lot of people that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, my carbon monoxide detector went off. I was having guests, actually we were having family for Thanksgiving, went off the day before, went over, the exhaust pipe was completely broken. Had I not had a carbon monoxide detector in the house, then who knows what would have happened. So I think we need to have that responsibility to our guests, that they have an expectation of safety. And, so I'm all in favor of, I don't know if you want to move forward tonight or not, but I am in favor of what you're trying to do.
I don't know that we could, it would even be a good idea to advertise that places are safe, because that makes people think maybe they're not safe. Maybe they weren't safe. Just a second, Larry, I'll get you up here. So anyway, I wouldn't suggest that from having any kind of marketing background, that you would advertise, gee, our place is safe, or our place has heat, or whatever. Okay, well, thank you. Larry, you want to come up and say something?
Just real quick.
No bullets, no knives. Larry Miskell, 107 Bayer Road, Stonehouse Bed and Breakfast. I've been a member of Bed and Breakfast Inns of Missouri for about 15, 16 years. They are a statewide organization. They have a bed and breakfast anywhere from 1 to 24 rooms as members, and they have a comprehensive list of what they inspect, and every 2 years we are inspected. And on safety, they have other aspects of it, but that doesn't fall under the purview of the city. You don't care what kind of mattress I got. But I would recommend that you look at their checklist, and also in there it has a safety, and it also has licensing about insurances and stuff like that. It would be a good guide for you if this is the way you're gonna go. Also, if you inspect an inn, you can't say it's a safe inn or what have you, But like we have on our website, we say we are an inspected in. Just a thought.
Okay.
Well, it's all of
Thank you.
discussing we've done with this. Why is this the first time tonight I've heard about the bed and breakfast in Missouri's inspection
Well, I think
checklist?
Susan
It's the
did.
first time
It's
I've
only
ever
for
heard.
bed and breakfast, remember, not guest houses, right?
Yeah, I understand that,
They
but,
cannot be a part of that.
yeah, however, the safety aspect of it,
Good point.
And we
that's
did
what
look
I'm,
at it.
that's what I'm
We
talking
looked
about.
at that.
And it's,
You have that?
it's,
Okay.
I don't have it with
It-
me, but
it's
I
a-
have it at home.
okay.
We did look at it.
Yeah.
and it is, you know, and I will tell you, just real quickly, you talk about egress and degress, and I understand that, but I'm here to tell you, if you have a standard sized window, there's no 300 pounder, it's gonna get out the window.
No, that's why there needs to be an inspection.
Yeah, anyway, that's-
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, moving down the list, Scott, you wanted to talk about, the ordinance, I think, do you have anything?
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Scott McGar, I live here in Herman, Missouri. And I know when we had the discussion about the street ordinances, and I'm always of the opinion less government is better than more government. Going from that background, thank you. Going from that background, one of the things on the sign ordinance, it got rewritten 4 times. And each time you guys read it and said, okay, we're gonna make these changes, and then next time read it and we made some more changes, and we read it and we made some more changes. You're mentioning in January, you've got to wait until the bread and breakfast deal. Why not just table this all, wait until January? Get the same ordinance written for the bread and breakfasts, because you're arguing it's safety. If the bread and breakfasts, if there's going to be some mishap, it's going to be in the news in St. Louis, whether it was a B&B or a guest house, if they got burned up, I guess we can feel better because the owner got burned up too. Is that going to change anything? No. So if your argument is you're wanting to be able to protect that industry, disregard whether it's a bread and breakfast, make it the same for all of them. Going to what Dave said, and for on the idea that we got too many bread breakfasts or not enough residential housing, the great thing about the way markets work, if someone can make money, they will try to do it. But as you guys make these rules, you're actually influencing the ability for people to make money, and you're going to cost the city in the terms of people coming to here, new investors deciding they want to buy a piece of property and fix it up. I would a lot rather drive down streets and have houses that aren't occupied at that very moment, but at least being maintained so that they get occupied during the weekend, than not being used at all and having weeds and so forth growing up their porches. Because if you'll drive in some other towns, you'll see that happening just because this population's shrinking. And Herman's population is shrinking. The sad part is we have fewer people today than we did in 1950, and I bet when they do the 2020 census, we'll have less than we had in 2010. And people are unfortunately voting with their feet, they're leaving. And that being said, other communities are growing, but as you guys are looking at these things like, hey, we got not enough residential housing. The symptom is these bread and breakfasts are being done because it's an investment property. It's a symptom of people leaving. It's not the cause of people leaving. People are deciding to leave because of other issues, economic issues, etc. But I would say this, if I was going to buy bread and breakfast, I definitely wouldn't want to put one in the city limits of Herman. I'd rather be outside the city limits. And in fact, the only thing I kind of wish I'd done is if you guys left the idea of having flashlights, I was looking forward to being able to sell more of them. So that being said, and I will mention this because there's a lot of people who want to sell property and they don't want to list it or not. If you've got property outside the town, outside the city limits, I'd like to visit with you. Because I like to be able to open more businesses, but myself personally, I don't know if I want to open one inside the city. I think it'd be better off to be outside. Another mile out would save me some money and save me some heartache. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Scott, I appreciate it. What I heard from you was basically, wait. I didn't hear any other suggestions, just that.
Well, you're waiting, if you, like, hey, we have to have it done, inspections and so forth. Okay, instead of having inspections done by January 1st, make it May 1st, June 1st, July 1st. Does it change anything?
Yeah, I got you, thank you. Okay, Olin, did you want to come? No, you're finished, I think.
No.
You want to come up?
Just
Come on.
comments. No.
Thanks for giving me a second chance.
Sure.
because,
You're getting your exercise.
Yeah, I guess. With regard to this ordinance, I think the counselor's agreement to amend it on the fly is admirable, but I'm not sure that in a couple of weeks with the holidays intervening that there's going to be enough time, so it might not be the first meeting in January, it may be the second meeting. See, I think the only deadline perhaps is the April election. It's just a side note. I think this bill, I think the safety issues are pretty much okay, except included in the safety issues is the same language that's throughout. Restricting and regulating, regulated and managing, shall comply due to discontinued for a period of 6 months or more. What the situation is such with a bed and breakfast home, there's been people in Herman that had to move for employment reason, but they want to keep this home for retirement. So they're operating a non-owner occupied bed and breakfast. But if they let that lapse for 6 months, they you know, and maybe in an R2 district, they come back, they're going to, maybe we'll cure that with the conditional use thing. It is a permitted use. But, you know, safety, I think Mike Sloan and Melissa and several folks have talked about safety has no bounds, so why is there a difference between bed and breakfast homes, bed and breakfast inns, and guest houses? Okay? Then the other thing is, it seems to me like this is a lot of big government. It's kind of the city taking a role of managing and the property rights and the management of businesses. Is such satisfactory to the inspector at the zoning inspector's discretion. So there's really not much check and balance there, is there? I'm not sure this is in America. I think fundamentally this attacks personal property rights at its very core, whether a property owner is non-owner occupant or an owner occupant should not limit their ability to utilize their property in a manner that they see fit. Allowing the city to cancel existing businesses, rejecting new businesses, and most certainly impacts property values. This is my realtor and my property owner hat that I'm wearing. Moreover, people that have invested in this community will be hindered in their ability to sell properties they currently own, ensuring a decline in property value. Finding investors who likely purchase properties in Herman may be canceled, that might be canceled year after year or inspected yearly. You know, 2 years is a right time frame. BBIM is on the right track. This proposal directly impacts the welfare of the residents of Herman, which is counterintuitive to the very first paragraph of the proposed ordinance. As a realtor and as a bed and breakfast owner and another business owner, I think it's my professional opinion that these short-term rentals do not hinder the real estate market in Herman. In my opinion, they help the market by exposing more people to available real estate offerings in Herman, encouraging owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied investors to improve existing homes and buildings, which raises the overall property values. I think it's a great thing to bring visitors to Herman, because any number of them, a number in this room and a number in the bed and breakfast or in the tourism business, first visited Herman and fell in love with Herman. In fact, I think our mayor is new to town, relatively new. How long have you been here, Mr. Mayor?
5, 6 years.
5, 6 years. So, you know, people move to town for various reasons, but I just am concerned that we're going to rush to do this before the April election. And the same goes with the tourism tax. And I think I want to commend Susan on her efforts and her hard work and her committee, but I think there needed to be a broader range and maybe a coalition, and Mike Sloan suggested, safety from the fire and the police standpoint on those safety issues, people from the chamber and from the city and residents, maybe a little larger committee to address the various issues.
Hold on, do you have any issues with the specific safety items in this ordinance?
Well, there's a few that because it refers to the International Building Code, and we had quite a discussion. I was on a committee probably 15 or 20 years ago. Talked about that, and a lot of those issues don't necessarily fit, because if you're going to sprinkler every commercial building or a commercially zoned building that has a bed and breakfast or a residential component, that's not realistic or cost effective.
What are you talking about?
When you're referring, this ordinance refers to the International Building Code. And it
What did you say after that? You're gonna do what?
Well, it requires, does it not, perhaps Alderman Sherman, you have some experience on it, you can comment.
I don't think it does. I've checked with Lee on several occasions. and
Nothing about requiring sprinklers.
it doesn't-
No, not in this ordinance, but it refers to the International, it's quite a bit of latitude.
We've never required that in bed and breakfast or
And,
homes or inns.
I don't want to take too long, I'm taking too much time.
Okay.
Just two stair rails, two rails on steps going in a 30 or 32 inch wide antique 1896 building to the second floor, I mean, there's
That's
some.
not in here either, Owen.
No, but when it refers to if we're trying to regulate and comply, and if we're trying to micromanage the businesses in Herman, why, that is an issue. So,
It does
thank you for
say,
your time.
in any instance where the requirements of this chapter are different than those in the building code, the requirements of this chapter shall control.
Right. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't think you shouldn't be concerned with that. We took out the railing part. We've actually limited this and really reduced it down to what the people that come to these meetings have been telling us. We've been paying attention to it. And this is a long, drawn-out process.
Excuse me, but I just need to give other people a chance to.
Sure. But, and I'll just go ahead while you're sitting down and say that, again, if there's things that we need to know about besides what we've discussed already, then we probably ought to make a list of everything that we've got. Brent, do you want to come forward and speak about the ordinance?
Brent Wilkins, Captain Moulton. I just would like to say I'm very happy that so many people showed up tonight, especially a lot more younger people. Super excited that the Chamber of Commerce came out this evening. I'm also glad that we finally admitted it was a property rights issue. You are taking, if you pass this, a right from a property owner away from that property owner. It is clearly a property rights issue. The other thing I would say is, I think some of you have kind of hit on, it may be a way that somebody could lean on a business that they did not like. I will just show you, this is a 3-month period of the mayor calling the police on our business. 3-month period. The mayor calling the police on my business. None of them resulting in any charges that stuck. So again, I would maybe agree that we should wait till after the April election. Maybe get some other people in here that will do things that won't hurt Herman. One other thing, clearly property rights issue.
Brent,
I get 5 minutes.
can you talk about the subject at hand?
Certainly. If you pass this, not only will it immediately limit investment in this town, it will bring all of the lodging into commercial zoning. So we will quickly fill up what could potentially, as we grow, be future retail spots, future restaurants, and future bars. You will fill those with lodging, and you will cap the growth of Herman. That is the biggest thing this will do. And again, we clearly are rushing this through for some reason. There obviously are lots of people that don't agree with this, and they have very valid arguments. So certainly let's just table this for a little bit. Let's talk to these people, not just in meetings. Let's actually have people sit down and conversate. You live right by me. You can come by anytime you want. I'll give you a free breakfast any morning. Thankfully, I have had a couple other aldermen that have come, and they're thinking right. So I think people in town are excited. We got some aldermen that are moving us in the right direction.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brent. Nancy Satrick.
Oh,
She had to go. Okay. Brian, do you want to say something? I noticed you came in. Are you okay with?
No, I can.
Okay. Then is there anybody else? Anybody else that wants to speak? All right. Then what I heard, now I want you to correct me. Every time we do this, we add another thing that we want to discuss or we want to change. But basically what I heard had to do with the conditional use permits and taking those items out. And that's...
And a big concern for the rush of this, so we would all like to slow down.
We're getting there, Brian. We are really getting there. Is there anything else to add or subtract from what we have besides the conditional use permit? Because there may be 5 other things that could take 5 more meetings. Well, we could also do them at one time. So, I'm hearing we don't have anything else. Scott?
Sir, what I would just recommend, what you're gonna change it, post it, have another meeting, let people read that first, because there is a tendency for you guys just to go ahead, say, hey, we have changed this, and we'll vote right now, this is first reading, and then we'll have a second reading, and we'll change some more. Let everybody read it once, then if people come in and want to comment, let them.
Well, I'm trying to get to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Kathy wants to say something.
Kathy?
I just had a question on that committee that was formed to decide those. How many of those people are guest house owners?
Most of them, I think.
So there was a variety of everything. There was insurance, there was guest
Well,
house.
how
there
many
bed
were
breakfast.
actually guest house owner people?
3.
I know that, well,
I remember 3 in the one couple meetings I was in.
Mm-hmm. Full 3 or 4.
Can't remember who the 4th.
Who were they? Can you tell me? I know Frank.
Some of them
Camp
don't
and
want their
Nancy
names
Sager.
mentioned because they're afraid of how they'll be treated and what they've said. And you can't blame them.
Kind of like a nuisance. Nuisance
Okay.
too loud for you,
Yeah.
but it's too loud for me.
all right, this is, if there's nothing else besides the conditional use permit.
I do have one other problem with it. The portion in there that states about the revocation of the permits at any given time for any violation, that doesn't offer much leeway. to the
That's
guy.
in there now, Steve.
I know it's in there,
I mean,
but I'm
no,
saying.
I mean, that's existing in city ordinance, that when we give a bill, any kind of business license, we can revoke it. So that's,
For any
well,
minor violation?
it's not just, it's not at the whim of a person, but there has to be a hearing, published hearing, notification given 10 or 14 days or something ahead of time.
And an appeals process.
And there's an appeals process, so it's very,
It
very.
was a very short paragraph, that's why I was kind of curious.
Right,
on
but it
you know.
really refers to what's already out there. Everybody that has a business license is already under that.
And I guess my question was, if somebody came in and inspected and, they forgot an exit sign above the door, you guys gonna shut them down?
Oh, hell,
You know, I mean, but I mean, it could be, that's honestly.
No,
No,
I have 45 years.
That's,
that can't be, we've
I don't
never
trust
done
that.
that. We've never even come close to that.
she's gonna say you need a sign here.
Right, but what I'm saying, any of those violations that, if anybody does violate anything, are you guys gonna be quick?
How often have you seen us pull anybody's license?
I don't know, I don't pay attention.
No.
to it.
Okay,
It's
just
my
those.
business, so.
You tried to pull mine.
Steve,
I mean, it's the truth though.
I would say on an inspection like that, if the inspector would come in and see that the sign's not there, you get 30 days to fix it, she comes
Right.
back and looks at it. That's the
As
way
long as
most
there's
fire
time here,
department
there-
inspections
Or
are.
what about situations where, some of these existing guest houses and B&Bs, it's just, financially impossible for them to meet that code? What
It
situation?
takes $104 to buy the stuff for a 3-bedroom bed and breakfast and 127 if it's a 4-bedroom. The stuff isn't very expensive.
What if we got the 300-pound guy going out the window upstairs and that window is not big enough, you know? I mean, that's what, you
Well,
know.
can you put him in another room that has a bigger window?
I mean, they're gonna be on a guest house, they're gonna pick the room that they're gonna stay in.
One thing I would like to bring up for everybody here, and it kind of amazed me from the last session, is your industry is the guest house industry, bed and breakfast inn, or bed and breakfast home. And somebody alluded to it, all these safety regulations are mentioned in the International Builders Code. You guys should know that probably inside and out. It tells you the minimum width of a window, 20 inches. It has to open 24, that's the minimum. Door frame can go down to 28 inches. You guys should know those codes. You shouldn't say, are you gonna pick on us? You know, when you got your driver's license, you studied for it and you knew what you needed. I'm just saying you guys should be familiar with these codes as well.
If we're building a new house, that's more than fair comment to say. Problem is, there's houses in this town that are 150 years old.
And
that some of us have been running
that is
guest
a very good
houses
point.
for,
You cannot
you know,
modify them
Right. So
to
then
meet
what
some
do
of
we
these.
do?
And
We
that's not-
get shut down.
No, you're not. No. We've had.
No, but it says a means of ingress and egress, 2 means of egress.
Well,
That's not a means
here's
of
what would
egress.
happen. The board would
Great.
say, we take your license away, pending a hearing. And you would say, well, I want a hearing. And you would come here and say, this person wants to take my license away because my window is 19 inches and not 20 inches wide. Or my door is 27 inches and not 28, and it's gonna be thrown out.
Well, you can say that now,
Well,
but then
well-
I have to get an attorney and bring him here because I'm
Well,
not
well-
coming to a hearing or an appeal without an attorney present.
Well, then-
When I have $200,000 invested in the house, I'm not coming in here by myself
No.
with the chance that I could just lose everything in the
This has
business.
to, the thing has to come to the board before it can, you don't
It
have
just
to.
goes back to, this is great. It just needs so much fine tuning.
Well, that's already the case. So basically what you're saying is change the ordinance that we've had for years and years and years. We've never had anybody come forward and try to take a license away. And Brant, before you stand up, I was the one in court that said, we're not gonna take your license away. So I would
No,
appreciate.
that was not, I've got the transcript. So if you're sticking to that story, we can go back and look at the.
Well, I think you ought to get a copy of that,
Okay.
because I've looked at it.
And if I do, will you give me 5 minutes to read it at the next meeting?
What?
That'll only be fair.
Why don't you send a copy to we'll check it out.
Okay.
Okay, that gives us a chance. Thank you very much. Okay, we have this. I believe that if the aldermen are wanting to change the conditional use permit and eliminate that, then we should wait until January 13th.
I have a question for
Sure.
Dave real quick. We have to have the public hearing. We want to include the owner occupied B&Bs in these safety rules. We have to have a public hearing for that anyway. After that, can they be listed along with the rest of them in the ordinance? Or does it have to be a separate ordinance?
Your option.
It seems to me, since they're going to come under the same rules,
We
they
could
should
do it all
follow
at one
under.
time.
So this could be revised to say all.
And can we mention in there that any business that rents to transient occupants must follow the safety rules, which includes B&B homes, B&B inns, guest houses, vacation homes.
Is there one
I
description
think-
that would cover them all?
I think we,
No, I would list them all.
yeah,
Okay, probably a good
let
idea.
him do the wording.
Yeah, he's.
And we'll make sure that it's what we mean.
Well, let's do the
Well-
public hearing for the,
So, again, I'm starting where this came from. So that we,
I'm gonna get there too.
we're regulating, proposing to regulate with this ordinance bed and breakfast inns and guest houses. And it was suggested, and even suggested by some members of the public at the last meeting, that we also include bed and breakfast homes.
well, it was said tonight.
Yeah. And so, if we want to include any parties in interest, is what the statute says, in a new zoning regulation, they deserve to have notice of a public hearing where they have the right to come and say, hey, I didn't go to those public hearings when it was just bed and breakfast inns and guest houses because I was a bed and breakfast home and I knew I wasn't gonna be touched, but now you're including bed and breakfast homes. And so they deserve the right to receive some notice and come to a hearing. So, it would be, you know, technically, legally, you would have the option of having the public hearing at top of the agenda on January the 13th, and then also having the ordinance later in the meeting, and then passing 2 readings of the ordinance and have it all done on January the 13th. Or you could have the public hearing on January the 13th, and then you could have the first reading on January the 27th, and then you can have the second reading on February the, whatever, 13th, I think. You know.
Or we could have the first reading on the 13th and the second reading on the 27th.
Again, why are you pushing it?
Yeah, or, you know.
I would take it one step at a
From the
We're
quickest.
just talking about it, Brad.
And I'm asking the question, why are you the one that wants to push it faster?
I'm not. We're discussing this up here.
So anyway,
So we have 3
the
options.
quickest way you could do it would be to get it all done on the 13th of January. If you wanted to slow roll it, you could have the public hearing on January 13th and then have the 2 readings at the 2 subsequent meetings after that.
I think that would probably be the best course of
I think the 13th, you do your public hearing, and then you're gonna have discussions, you're gonna have the same problem you have this evening with, been revised if you have to, and then go ahead for,
I
what do you
believe that's.
think?
the
I
best
think
course.
that it's a good idea if we said we're gonna shoot for the first vote on the certain date, the 27th or whatever it is, so that we know we've got to get all the amendments together and put into the bill, so we can vote on it the first time. So that's why I keep asking, is there anything else besides the conditional use permits that we need to put in here, because we don't want to keep doing this one piece at a time. We want to get them all now, so if there's anything else, Olin?
I may have my hand up several times ago, but in response to your question, like 2 or 3 minutes ago, there, section 6,
What page?
Page 3.
section 6, section 6, and it is, I guess, B 3 on page 4. Perhaps the counselor wants to include and micromanage the size of the letters.
Let me make something clear. The counselor is not micromanaging or including anything.
Oh, okay.
This is their ordinance.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I do apologize.
There is.
I give legal advice. I don't tell them to include this in the ordinance, don't include that in the ordinance. The policy, the direction this is going is all the elected officials.
Okay.
There is a city ordinance on the books already stipulating, and there's a lot of them that's in violation. I can't understand why, because that house number is used by first responders, ambulance, fire department to go to such and such, 305 West 6th Street. There is no 305 West 6th Street. That number's jumped over. There's a house there, but there's no house number. So that's already been an ordinance probably for 60 some odd years.
Mine's on my mailbox. In front of the house, not on the house. That says I have to put it in the house.
See, that particular house, and there's a bunch of them, because I went door to door and campaigned, you don't see them. They may have a mailbox, but it's on the front of their house that has the house number. But that's been in existence longer than you've been in Herman.
I would like to see some consideration to number 9, references to International Building Code.
What's the concern with that specifically?
Well, the big government aspect of it.
That's already the building code. I mean, this isn't something that this is implementing. It's already here.
Right. But I think there are challenges.
Well, of course they are.
With the, as I referred to at the public hearing, with historic buildings meeting those codes.
And that's why it says the requirements of this chapter shall control. They're saying that, yeah, we have a building code, but this covers that. It's not saying that you have to have fire sprinklers and the railings and all that.
Dave, could you clarify that legally? I believe it does say if they're saying we have to meet the International Building Code. We can't come in and say, unless we specifically say no fire code. If the International Code says fire extinguishers, this would say you have to meet that, correct?
I'm not gonna answer any more hypothetical questions on this draft.
So, those are questions, how do we get those questions answered then? So can we have a meeting where we actually can ask questions and you can answer them
Well, let
for
me
us?
ask, look, Brent, what is the question? From what I heard, you're saying if the International Building Code says this, and it stands unless it's overridden by
Sir,
the...
and just to be clear, I already get state inspected, so what I think is happening, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think many of these small places that when you put in International Building Code and a first-time inspection on many of these places, they're gonna be in a world of hurt, and they're gonna have a $5,000 or a $10,000 bill. Because railings, you say that, but Greg, the county railings for a business are different than a residence, correct? The height of a railing required on a lodging business is different.
Why don't you go down and ask him the question? He's across the street from you.
I'm trying to get you to not, you say you want to do this right so it doesn't require it, but I'm trying to get you and tell you don't have all the information, but for some reason you want to rush this through. You've upset the attorney enough because you got him with this thing in the wind and you're not doing things right. So you're trying to get this done quickly and it's ridiculous. Like you just keep rushing and there's 30 people here telling you to slow down.
Brent, some of the questions you asked went back to what I alluded a while ago. Read and look at the IBC code.
Sir, I know it. You're going to have lots of places in trouble if you drop this international
And then
building
refer
code
to what's
on our
covered
city.
in the ordinance.
Okay, we'll look at it, Brad. We will. Is there anything else? Yes.
I got a question. Dennis Sperry. You have signs that say maximum occupancy, and everybody, as far as a guest house goes, they know it on their website. It's in our contracts. I mean, yeah, it's not a big deal to add one, whatever, but it's just one more thing. I'm confused on why that's needed in a guest house, and also exit signs. I've stayed at VRBO houses all over the country. I've never been in a single one that has an exit sign over the door. It's not a big deal, I understand. But it's just one of those things where it's like, how many houses have you guys ever slept in and you didn't know where the exit door was? I can see in a bed and breakfast or a motel where there's many doors and you're not going in every one of them. You know every room in the house that you're staying in for the most part, and you know where the exit door is. And there again, like I said, it's not a huge deal. It's just one of those things where I don't understand the use of that in this application.
Well, safety-wise, my wife and I travel quite a bit. Every motel, hotel, B&B, and guest house I've stayed in, the exits were clearly marked. I honestly didn't see that would be a big issue with you.
In a
That's
guest
how we
house
think it
though?
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a chart on the wall that shows you exactly where everything is.
You travel different spots.
Yeah, I've never.
I honestly didn't think you guys would,
No,
be macho with that.
it's not a huge deal to me. It's just one little notch.
I'm one of those people, when I go into someplace I'm not familiar with, I look where the exits are. I mean, I look at that chart, I see where's the way to get out. I've been in hotels where the fire alarm went off.
A hotel, I understand.
Okay.
I understand hotels, I understand these guest houses.
We need a sign this big, a 1 by 12 by 16 sign over a 3-foot by 8-foot door if it's not lit up. Because some of these, on these old houses, you can't wire them to make them light up. They'll have a little sign over a freaking huge door, like, you can see the door, we know how to get out.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, no, but it looks tacky, having a cheap plastic little $1.50, if we're gonna keep it under $100 and go buy $5 carbon monoxide detectors, and apparently they put themselves up for free. We have to pay people to do all this stuff, so I'm tired of hearing about it. It costs $100 to do this. But then you buy a $1.50 exit sign, it looks like crap.
Well, you can buy a more expensive one, I guess,
Well, I'm going my $100 budget then, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just.
Curiosity, I'm confused, how do I get out of this building? There's not an exit sign on that, there wasn't one here. There is one outside though, fortunately. My point
The exit doors are marked.
Well, I understand, but my point is, you don't have them in every spot in this
I
building.
don't think the ordinance requires an ordinance over every door, an exit over every door that gets you out of a room. It's talking about doors to the outside, and there's probably only 2 in the house. I don't really see this. Is this a huge problem? Putting a couple of exit signs up, and also to your point. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but the issue is this, every building is a little bit different. I have to comply with the code as well, as far as I've got exit signs in my building. I have to have a little map. It's ridiculous because my building's only, 1,800 square feet. If you can't figure out how to get out of the spot that you just came into, and literally there's just enough room in there to get in and get back out, then there's an issue there anyway. But that being said, every building's unique. You're going in and saying, okay, everything's going to have one-time flashlights. We got rid of the flashlights. You're just pushing on this direction. But I might ask, if you're going with the number of guests, do you intend to have the ordinance officer come by and count how many people are actually at that place?
No.
Then
No.
how?
But it would be a good thing to put on the inside of the door that the occupancy of this house is 12. So that when there's 100 people there, and they're all over the outside, or there's 15 or 20, and there's a problem, there's a fight, or there's something, that we could find out there were too many people there, you were violating the law.
Who would violate the law?
Well, the person that rented the property.
How is a person who rented the property in violation of the law because there's more people that showed up than when he rented it?
When there's a lawsuit, they would probably be important to know there were 3 times more people than there were supposed to be. And that's the other thing I was gonna say, thanks Scott, is that on the inside of the door, the only thing that's really required is the maximum occupancy, the owner's name and phone number, or manager, and the emergency numbers, and so forth. That's all good information to have.
I understand that.
And that's on the inside of the door.
I understand that, but what I'm getting at is, and none of my people are gonna look at that. Not a single one of them, because they all have me on their phone anymore. I mean, in this day and age, they're not going to the door going. Now, for the emergency numbers, yes, something on the, we put in a plaque right next to, wherever. That's fine, but in our numbers, in the same thing with the Wi-Fi password and all that, that's fine. But for me to have to go get a plaque, put it on there, or whatever, does it cost much? No. Is it tacky? Yes. Exit sign? Yeah, they make fancy ones, whatever. But in a house, like I said, I understand a motel or a building where there's many doors that these people are not allowed to go in. And they may not have a door that says, that the exit door looks the same as the door into that bedroom or that bedroom or that bedroom that I don't go in. But in a house, a guest house, a true one where it's rented to one person, no matter the size, 15 bedrooms, 1 bedroom. That person, everybody would know how to get out.
And I think there's probably validity to that, except in the fact, in case we do have a fire and there's a lot of smoke and confusion, it may not be quite so obvious to some of the people, 1 or 2 of them, exactly the shortest distance to a door, and so forth. So it's a good idea to have an exit sign, and they make them now. They look nice.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah,
they glow in the dark. You don't have to wire them. We didn't require any of that stuff.
No, and I understand that. And like I said, I mean, Dave says he's seen them, and I don't say that he hasn't. I have never been to a VRBO house that has had one.
I'm sorry, I'm getting tired of looking
Yeah,
at
no, it's okay.
listening to you, so I figured
And
I'd do
I don't have a huge problem with it, because we would just get a fancy one or whatever. But some people don't want it, period. And
Well-
it's just, like I said, it's just one more thing, and one more thing, that, you know, we're all for safety.
Well, everybody says that, but then what we
But-
hear is, we don't like exit signs, we don't like
Well-
door
You know,
address numbers.
occupancy,
We
putting
don't have-
occupancy on your door helps you guys too. You rent your house to Jane and Paul, they bring 20 people with them, you don't know that.
Yeah, I understand
And then
that,
the doors close, they see the exit routes, oh, we only can have 15 people.
but they know
But
that.
that's when they rent it.
When they rent it, they sign a contract with me. It's right there, it's right on my website, it's everywhere.
I've gone on a lot of websites lately, I found one that had the occupancy listed.
Well, those
Well,
people,
it says sleeps. You put sleeps, that's how many people it holds.
Yeah,
That's how
I
many
just-
people can stay.
yeah.
That's the way it reads.
That's what it is. Kathy?
I think this has come a long way. I think both sides need to make amends, and we need to put up with some of these things as well. You guys have changed, we also need to go along with it, just because.
And we need to get all the ideas out here, and I'm hearing these things, to me, if we say we're all in favor of safety, then to me, this is a safety issue, so I still go back to say, if the conditional use permit, is either taken out or maybe not, then is that all we've got? Is there something else? And if so, then we know what to change, and we can come back the 13th of January. That's quite a bit of time. So we can, that should give us a chance to get it exactly how we want it, so we can vote.
Hey, Bob, ask you one, nobody brought this up. Occupancy, one person did, that gentleman right there. The way I read it is, I'm gonna tell you how many people I can sleep in my place,
it. That's correct.
Right.
okay? So if there's 10 people in that place, and I've got 10 people on my door, let's say that's where I put it, everything's fine, right? And yeah, some of these things, Kathy might be right, some of the things we'll just get along with, but, what about the insurance? We're not doing that anymore, correct? We got insurance, Steve's an insurance agent, so's Olin. We've got insurance on every building, okay?
You have to have liability insurance.
Exactly.
It covers a commercial
600,000?
application.
That's
And we
fine.
don't care how you get it, I mean, the insurance man said basically, you'll find it'd be very difficult to find a major carrier that's gonna write it on a homeowner's, but we even put that in there, in case you can get it.
I think so far that's perfect. The ordinance officer, okay? Is she gotta be insured like building inspectors insured? If not, I think
Against
she
what,
needs to.
against emissions and errors and
Well,
emissions?
I'm asking you guys, because I don't even, not even thought about it. I know somebody else has brought it up, I believe.
Here's the
But if
motion.
she comes into my home and she tells me everything is perfect, and somebody gets hurt, you know, the guy with the most money gets in the most
I
trouble.
don't think she's gonna
and that's
take
the city.
perfect.
No, what he's asking is,
What's her
does she have
responsibility
personal
overall?
insurance that covers if she makes a mistake? Do we cover that, or does she have to have, basically be bonded, I guess?
She needs to be bonded or insured.
Do you know?
I don't have that answer. I
Okay.
told you before I called Myrma, and they said that the city wouldn't have any liability.
That's wrong.
As an employee and an inspector, she would be under errors and omissions through Myrma Insurance.
So, I think what you're saying is, if she makes claims that because she inspected it, everything is without fault and so forth, that, I don't think she's gonna do that. What she's doing is inspecting these 8 or 9 things that she's supposed to look at, and saying they're either there or they're not there. That's-
So we're gonna do without a building inspector? If I build
No.
a new home, he's building a new one, so am
No,
I.
if it's a building inspector issue, she'll get the building inspector in. If it's a police issue, she'll get the police department in. That's not what she's gonna do, Kevin. Now, we've talked about that, you know
I
that.
understand, but it's just so confusing that I got a sunshine, piece of paper from Sunshine Law to see how many complaints we had with guest houses. There was 21 of them, I believe. Only one of them actually was about a guest house, okay? The other ones were on 3rd Street, and another one was because she didn't pay for her business license. So I don't understand why you would tell us, you're smarter than us as far as keeping people safe. We have to be safe. Putting a little sign up, I think, is a little bit out of, it's not professional. We're not a motel. We have one motel in this town.
Well, Kevin, everybody here has already said that the safety issues are fine. They're not arguing now. Now we're starting to argue about the sign that you don't like. I think we've all agreed at this meeting, last meeting, the meeting before that, and in every meeting that Susan had, that the safety part of it's fine. It's just a question of the implementation of it and the way it's set up.
You just said what I think is best. Let's just do the safety and leave the guest houses alone. We can write one bill. And then you can table the other stuff for guest houses until after the election or right before it. It doesn't matter.
I just
It needs
said
more
that.
time.
I just said that about 5 minutes ago.
But you guys, I'm telling you, you keep saying she did a great job for a year. And I'm not cutting on anybody here. But no, I wasn't contacted. I house more than anybody. Any company in this town, I have more guests than anybody. I wasn't contacted.
She didn't contact everybody, Kevin,
But I'm asking you though, Bob, there's so much stuff that was not discovered. And we're discovering now that manpower for a year, you didn't get to it. Because you would have realized that, well, we need to slow down. Dave, I know you got mad tonight, but I think you could have slowed us down because you are the illegal authority in this office. Disappointed in you. This has gotten way out of hand, and you know there's a lot of personal rights here, and you didn't put your foot down. That's what your job is.
I don't represent you, Kevin.
You represent this
I represent the city of Herman, who says draft an ordinance, I draft an ordinance. They send me a draft, they say, make sure this language is in it, gets in it, to the extent that it's legal.
all right.
When you say the city, do you mean the mayor or do you mean the city?
How many drafts have you guys looked at in the last 2 weeks? 12? 15? Guys, you got comments?
Why doesn't the mayor have you post those so we can see it? And
It was
we can start
posted
talking?
yesterday at 10 o'clock,
So
and here you
say
are.
before you come. But no, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at him for saying, well, why didn't we know about this earlier? If you would post it, not you, but if it would be posted 2 or 3 weeks earlier than a meeting, then it's not rushed and we really can look at it. But we all know that there's a guy out there that wants this through quickly. That's what this is all about.
Scott.
I understand what you're asking. You're like, hey, if we take these things out, you guys will be okay with it. I'm asking you, don't tell us we should be okay with it until you actually put one on paper, post it at least more than 10 hours before the meeting, or 24 hours, or whatever it happened to be this time. Let us look at it, and maybe we might have more comments or whatnot. But obviously this was an issue because we had this many people show up on a week and a half, less than 2 weeks, less than Christmas. And I know everybody here had something better to do than this. Maybe even you guys should have had something better to do.
Okay,
Can we ask for a clarification from Trish? Doesn't everything always go out at the same time before a meeting?
Well, no,
But
it
you
could be
could get
earlier.
better at that.
Grant, please.
I'm sorry. No, there's a 16 business hour deadline for posting ordinances, that's all.
But you can know way before that.
Usually way before then, yes.
Yeah.
But all this that we talked about tonight isn't just Herman. I know somebody brought up, we don't care what happens in Podunk, USA, and I've researched it and challenged you guys, from the state of California to Maine, B&B, guest house and inns, occupancies, fire restrictions, safety restrictions happen. And are we gonna make them all, everybody happy? No. But what I'm here tonight is, we don't want any of it. Do away with it. We'll run our business, and one person has quoted that, as we damn well feel. Well, I think the city needs to have some type of control, because those that are less than 5 rooms, there is no requirement for them. So why shouldn't we?
I think you're hearing we're fine with the safety, but we feel you're rushing this.
Well,
So
just
we
got-
are okay with the safety, but let's take, I mean, honestly, why is there a rush? Isn't it better to do it right than to rush it and do it wrong? And clearly, 2 meetings in a row with 35 people here, and you can tell the mayor, look at him. I mean, he's so frustrated because he wants this, and you gotta start wondering why.
I would like to say something.
Sure, go ahead.
We're frustrated because we worked really hard. We're not trying to screw you guys over. We came up with, and don't sit down, it's not your turn to talk. Park it. Sit down.
Hey.
Listen.
Brad,
We-
let the Alderwoman's talk.
I'm letting her talk, but she's not
We-
gonna tell me what to do. Go ahead.
I am.
Do you want to sit down and behave yourself, or do you want to leave?
Pretty sure it's not against the law to stand.
This is the mayor's house, Brent. You gotta do what he says or leave.
All right, you wanna arrest me for standing?
Okay, go ahead, Susan, but don't disrupt the meeting.
Now where was I? We had all these ideas, we put them all out there. They've been culled down and shortened because we want it to be right for all of you. That's why we've made the changes. That's why we had a public hearing. That's why we had this meeting tonight. That's why we're gonna do the public hearing on
The 13th.
January 13th. That's why we're not voting on it. We may not vote on it till the 27th. So we are slowing all this down. We are looking at everything you all tell us. And that's all I can say. I don't know what else you want us to do unless we just throw it all out the
So
window.
ma'am, what I would say to that is there are 10
Brad, you don't have the
places
floor,
that
Brad.
do 90% of the business in town. You didn't ask those places.
Okay.
One more
Brad,
question.
if you want to speak, you raise your hand, you'll be recognized, and come forward. You can't talk from back there.
You've been letting everybody else do it.
Olin, please, Brad wants you to come forward.
Okay. I neglected to, no, that's fine.
No, I moved it so I could see him, so.
Number 8, register, my question is about register shall be maintained indicating the name of the person renting the bed and breakfast in a guest house and the total number of guests in that person's party. And I think most everyone does that.
But that's fine, that's your
but don't our guests have a right-
Safeguards it.
Don't our guests have a right to privacy?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So therefore, or why is that provision in there, I guess?
It's in every place that I know of. There's a register required. We don't.
I know, but why provide that to the city?
No, it doesn't say
It
that.
doesn't say
It
that.
says,
The register shall be maintained.
Just maintain it. If there ever, I'll tell you one thing, if there's ever a lawsuit about it, then all the attorneys are gonna wanna know.
well, yeah,
who was there.
they'll get it, sure.
Okay, that's all.
No, we don't.
So I
That's
don't
for
know.
you all.
I think you're reading too much into this stuff. I really do.
I guess refer to the BBIM checklist.
I don't,
Mayor?
Anyway, yes.
May I suggest that we curtail the conversation and same thing keeps coming up and coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You know,
think
it's
we've
8:30
covered it
almost
all.
and we got other business
And
to
the only thing, I appreciate that, Bruce, and I think at this point, we're gonna table this until January 13th. We'll try to get the copy out ahead of time. We have plenty of time now to do that. And we will, in the meantime, like I said last time, if something comes up, you can send it to the clerk, you can send it to me, or your alderman, anything that you forgot. But if this is the next, we're gonna go, whatever we end up with on the 13th, I reserve the right to actually vote on it. I'm not planning on it, but we could vote on it. We're gonna add the bed and breakfast in, so bed and breakfast will cover all rental properties, short-term rental properties, and that's what y'all wanted, so that's what we're gonna do. We'll have a hearing on that, and we'll make it work out the best we can, so that Dave's satisfied, and we're satisfied. So we're gonna stop on this now. We're gonna move forward with the rest of the,
Can I say one thing, please?
Yes.
I just want to apologize for getting sharp for a little bit there, but we all get frustrated, so I'm sorry I got a little frustrated.
I think that this is an important issue in safety. It's important. It's important for Herman to have safety standards. We will really look bad if something happens and we have to admit, well, we tried to get them, but the guest house people didn't want them. So we don't have any ordinance, we don't have inspections, we don't have insurance requirements, so that's okay then. It's not okay. We need to protect the people that come here, at least with a basic across-the-board set of standards. And I don't hear any argument about the safety issues. But then the specific ones, the sign's too big for this. Let's move on, okay? Thank you. Okay. The next issue is bill number 2019-54.
That is an ordinance to revise Schedule 8 of Title 3, Traffic Code, Handicapped Parking.
Move to approve.
Second. Sorry.
She got you first there.
Yeah, she got it.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, and does that, yeah, that was the second reading. Okay. And the next one is Resolution 1275. Do you want to read that, Dan?
Resolution 1275 is a resolution to intervene in the Panhandle Eastern Pipeline Company's Federal Energy Regulatory Commission rate case and to hire legal counsel.
Now, this is an interesting one, and this is very important. I think that we had somebody that wanted to discuss that.
I believe it was Scott.
It was Scott?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead, Reggie.
we want to talk about it first, and then maybe we'll answer some of your questions. Now, broadly speaking, I know Dave's read it, and Mark is familiar with it more so than I am. But basically, it's a tariff increase, it's a rate increase on the pipeline that handles our gas. And they were asking for a very large increase, and we don't think it's fair. So, if I got that pretty well right, Mark, you want to go into the details of it, or?
All I can say, they're wanting a 400% increase in their tariff, which would really cost us a lot of money as far as purchase of gas. Compared to what this would cost us to what we would have in legal fees, would be well worth the money spent.
What is their justification for that?
They haven't had a rate increase since 1992.
So 400% is a...
Then they want to take it all out basically on the small city transmission systems, the small cities like Herman, Fulton, all the little cities around. Anyway, this was at the behest of our marketer, or the gentleman who schedules our gas, Ron Reagan, and this was his recommendation. And he's getting cities all along the pipeline to participate. The more he gets in, the cheaper it's going to be for us. And I'm thinking right now, the total for all 5 of our cities is about $18,000.
I will point out,
These are total.
Total.
Okay.
As you all know, we're a member of the Municipal Gas Commission of East Central Missouri, and the other towns are New Haven, Middletown, Florence, and Berger. And they had a gas commission meeting on Friday where they passed a gas commission resolution that specifically said that each member city's representative at that commission meeting was putting their city's clout on the line and pledging to pay their share of these costs. Because the city of Herman is Panhandle Eastern's customer. And, you know, we needed them on record to say they were gonna be there with us, and they did.
Well, considering the cost of not doing it, I don't see how we can say no.
What are our expectations of prevailing on this? Do we have
I
any
asked
idea?
Ron what he thought it would end up being settled percentage-wise. He said probably about a 50% increase instead of 400%, is what he's seen in the past.
And it costs us, how much? What's our share?
City of Herman's probably $8,000, and New Haven's around $9,000, and then Berger, New Florence, and
So we're 8,000, and it saves us,
$360,000, I think, or roughly $300,000.
Is that per year?
Yes.
Anybody need any more information?
Scott, what do you want to say?
Scott, come on.
Actually, I agree with submitting the request. I mean, I've seen these things done before. The question that I was hoping to be able to, you already addressed, is how much. But I actually would ask you to do this. When you pass these resolutions, cap the amount. As Mr. Brandt would have, when he was here in the legal discussion, you guys spent way too much for a dispute over a neighbor. And as aldermen, you guys should have stepped in and said, hey, we're only willing to spend X. And that would have probably curtailed some of what the hard feelings that has developed over that. That being said, if it's 18 is what the cost will be, you're going to get, and I know New Haven buys their gas from us and Berger, et cetera, so we're not going to bear all that cost.
Correct.
Cap it, say we're not going to spend any more than 20 grand. Put that as part of the resolution. That doesn't mean they can't come back and say, hey, we need another 10. But at least then you guys get to vote on it, and the public gets to know what's going on, so it doesn't get to be a situation where you got way too much spent on legal bills.
Let me say this, I believe you're right, but when you're in a lawsuit or you're gonna thinking about some type of court action, it's not a good idea to tell people, well, we'll spend 8,000, because then they know.
Well, you don't tell the other side, but you can be able to put in a resolution on this part that, hey, we're gonna be willing to spend this amount. And put it
Yeah,
all
I'm
down.
not sure we can
But
do
on your
that.
litigation, you're right, you can't really go out and say publicly
it's
that,
very
but you guys had plenty of private meetings, you could have done that to begin with.
Well, you know, I'm not sure that that would fall under that. I don't think we would do that. But in this case, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to incorporate the $8,000 or 10 or 12 or 15,000?
I think that number is still floating around a little bit because Ron is still getting other cities involved up until Friday.
Well, would you
We will
want?
know our share at that point, I think.
So, should we pass a resolution to allow me to sign anything up to 15,000, or what do you guys want to do? Dave, how do you feel about that?
It's entirely up to you guys.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about that? Should we just join the case, or should we join the case with the stipulation our part is not to exceed a certain amount?
Yeah, I would go with a not to exceed figure of 15,000.
City of Herman's portion.
Yeah.
Not to
Yeah.
exceed 15,000.
How do y'all feel about that?
Anybody
And
have a
it's
problem?
18,000 total
At this point, with the other five cities.
Good chances it's gonna go lower.
Does it
If
change?
Well, it should be lower,
Yeah, so we shouldn't even come close, but 15,000
but
at
if it
least
should go up,
says,
it can't go beyond that.
That's what I'm saying.
is that okay?
And then if it goes beyond that, what happens?
Then
We
it
have to
comes
vote on
back
it.
to us to approve it.
It'll come back, okay.
Okay,
I will make that vote.
you'll make that motion. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a resolution, so we don't need to vote on it 2 times. Did we cover everything we needed to with the votes? Have we got everything read twice, it needs to be read twice and so forth? Trish?
Yeah, we tabled, bill number 2019-53.
Correct.
We tabled, bill number 2019-55. So we're just down to the motions.
Yeah, we did 56. We did it twice, yeah.
Right.
At the starting.
Okay, the motion to table number 55, 2019-55, was a motion ever made on that? So that's really just,
Does it require a motion, or? do you
no,
just-
I just want to know, because if we make a motion and it has a second, then we have to bring this up every time. I don't think this requires that.
There was no formal motion.
Right. And then on the other, we had the same thing. So on the one with the guest houses, we will advertise, and we'll have the bed and breakfast public hearing on the 13th of January. And we'll have an ordinance to approve that covers everything, or 2 ordinances, however you decide to do that, so that everybody's included.
I think the consensus earlier was in favor of just combining them into one ordinance.
Right, okay.
And then
As
having a
long as we
hearing and
can
then
do
2
that.
readings.
Okay. Yep. All right, good. So we don't need we've already met the requirement on the guest houses for the public hearing. Now we just have to cover the bed and breakfast and hotels.
Well, what'll be noticed up for public hearing, or actually published, is a caption of the proposed ordinance, which we'll come up with by Thursday, right? Because that's when we gotta give notice to the paper. So it's gonna be a caption that includes bed and breakfast inns, guest houses, bed and breakfast homes, and hotels. And so, yes, we're covering bed and breakfast homes and hotels, and we're kind of double covering bed and breakfast inns and guest houses.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, since we're doing that, should we only have one motel, should the motel be?
Well, there's 8. There's 8 of them. And they can come. That's why they certainly are invited to come and participate. But there's actually 8 of them.
Well, yeah, we should include them.
Well, what I'm saying is include them in the
Yeah,
ordinance.
oh, yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah. So it'll be, the additions will be bed and breakfast homes and hotel motels, I guess.
Okay.
And any other lodging establishments provided in the Herman Municipal Code.
Okay, so we all know,
One quick question on the hotel. That's still one fire extinguisher per level, right? I mean, they've got it, but I mean, you're not gonna cause them to have one per room, correct? The smoke detectors, yes, but not the,
we don't have a fire extinguisher for every room now.
no, but I just wanted, motels are a little bit different
Well,
animal.
we need to look at what we have and make sure that we don't have an
Oh,
issue
okay.
with a motel or hotel. But there's 8 of them, so
Usually a fire extinguisher.
fire
involved.
extinguisher and so forth.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Well, the
okay.
last thing you wanna do is grab a fire extinguisher to begin with, get
Right.
out.
Right. Okay? Anything else? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
No, don't we have to do B, extend conditional use permit for?
We have to do all the motions
And
and
minutes.
Oh, okay, I didn't even see it. Item, what is it, item 2?
4A.
What's the resolution 1275?
Motion.
That was the Panhandle gas pipeline.
Minutes.
Minutes
Gotcha,
and
okay.
conditional use permit.
We have to go through the motions, minutes, what are we approving, the minutes for last meeting?
Yes.
I make a
Okay.
motion to approve the minutes from the last
Second.
meeting.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Extend conditional use permit renewals to February.
If we're gonna do away with conditional use permit.
Well, we don't, well, they still are on the books now, I think we ought to extend it.
They're there now.
They're there now, so we don't want people nervous.
What this is in the last year or so, bed and breakfast and guest house conditional use permits have come up for renewal. Maybe one came up in April, one came up in July, one came up in September. And whenever they came up, we just said to renew them to January 1st.
Right, I understand.
In anticipation of all this. And so, as of right now, we've got a half a dozen or so conditional use permits coming up for renewal on January 1st. But we shouldn't leave those people hanging wondering what's going on. We should postpone those, I think, until we figure out what we're doing.
Is February gonna be long enough?
Should we do it till?
We should do it till March.
March, since we're actually out in January now, maybe we ought to make it March.
I would think so.
Okay, let's change that to March. Okay, and,
There was one more thing, Mayor. There were some changes to a contract we passed last meeting.
okay, but don't we need to vote on this one, or do we, it's a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? B is carried. Okay, I'm sorry, Trish. What else do we have?
Yes, so the company Burns and McDonald Engineers entered into a consultant agreement with the city with respect to the airport project, and we passed an ordinance to approve that agreement. And there were 2 sections that they wanted to amend in that agreement, both having to do with insurance requirements for Burns and McDonald and any subs that Burns and McDonald would use. Before, it had insurance limits of certain dollar amounts or less. And what they're proposing is just to say that our contractors shall have certain dollar amount limits and eliminate the words "or less." And I don't see any harm in that from the city, or from the city's perspective.
It
In
actually
fact,
Mark,
is
you
better.
think that's
It's an
acceptable?
improvement.
Yeah, that's
Right.
actually, that's good, that's a good.
Then I move to approve those
There's
changes.
another, was there?
Second, we have a
Well, there
motion.
was section 8 and 7 and 15.
Yeah.
7 had to do with any Burns and McDonald subs,
Okay.
and 15 had to do with Burns and McDonald
that's
subs.
Are we approving all that now? Okay, we have a motion made and a motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now is there anything else that we have? City clerk?
No.
Okay, now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, I think you had 5.
Well, but,
Move to adjourn.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Do we have anything to sign tonight?
Not the alderman, just the mayor.
Okay.
And I had it on you, and then, but I had Ryan Cox on dual, you know,
That's the only thing I tried to get out of it was, is there anything else we can do?
No, they're gonna make more cuts next time, they don't make more cuts next time.
Okay.
Then we're gonna have 6 pages of
I did not turn it off.
There's gonna be nothing